12 o'clock, so we can start. Try and keep an eye on participants while I'm scrolling. Yes. So I'll start similar to how I started the other day, as far as just going over like the brief overview of some of the items and what we're up against. Uh, as many of you know, over the last 2 years, we've worked diligently to keep the budget relatively flat, or at least in line with revenue growth. Um, and that was despite rising costs in our neighboring towns increasing their budgets by 5 to 10% year over year. Maintaining this level of funding without compromising essential services has become increasingly difficult. One, due to the inflation as well as the rising cost of goods and services and wages as well. The budget I presented to you, or am presenting to you, has no new debt service items. We had originally discussed purchasing a replacement truck for Public Works. Our oldest one is currently 2005. It's in rough shape. However, Preston and I decided the best course of action was keep our maintenance budget relatively stable where it was and focus that money on fixing the trucks that we have, with a focus on preventative maintenance and maintaining that moving forward. That's not saying we're not going to need another truck next year. We've put this off for 2 years. I'm just trying to get one more year. So the maintenance budget for Public Works is going to look a little wonky because it's actually going to look like we decreased it. For those of you that aren't familiar, last year we replaced the body on one of our trucks because it was completely rotted out. That came at a cost of close to $47,000. So rather than pull that $47,000 back out of the maintenance line, we just left it and decreased the line a little bit so that that money's there to make those repairs. We do have another truck that has a body that we're going to attempt to resuscitate and keep going rather than replace it. But in the near future, that body might need to be replaced too. And it's too bad because it's our newest truck. It's just the salt and calcium. And my guys have been doing a good job at washing trucks when they can. I mean, if they're working 70 hours, they're not going to wash trucks in 10-degree weather. But I can tell you over the last 2 weeks, we've washed all the trucks twice. Necessary cost increases. So adjustments include increases in supply lines and wage adjustments for fire and rescue. I bring up fire and rescue because we've adjusted wages for everybody else. We've continued to keep them low. Our firefighters are currently paid minimum wage. Officers get a stipend. What I'm looking to do is eliminate the stipends altogether, pay the wages based off of their certification level, or if you're the chief, you'll get a higher wage. If you're the captain, you'll get a higher wage. And I've structured that inside the budget. And all of this is reflecting on the 2023 salary survey that we looked at from MMA. I haven't looked at 2024's, but my guess is the wages have increased from what they were then. I'm still using the figures from then. Employee compensation, with the exception of fire and rescue, all I've proposed for everybody else. So that's library administration, public works, solid waste, is just a 2.5% cost of living adjustment, which actually I paired with the Social Security increase, not necessarily the actual true inflation rate. But we did do a lot of work to get those wages in line with the 50th percentile. And I feel like we're where we need to be, and now it should just be a, annual review of what we're looking at. I did make a proposed change to health insurance benefits. Obviously, this can be discussed when we meet in select board meeting. Our current policy for the town is we pay 80% of an employee's health insurance, and then they pay 20. I sent an email out to numerous towns requesting their input on what they're doing. And on average, I wouldn't even say on average, above average, the consensus is they're paying 100% of employee and they're paying 80% of family. I don't think Buckfield can afford that. So I did a hybrid approach where I proposed 90%, 10%, and then employee and children coverage, which is obviously cheaper than family coverage, is 70-30. And then the family coverage remains the same, which would include a spouse, because a lot of times the spouse is a working spouse and is offered insurance at their employer. So kind of want to entice them to utilize what they have offered at their work. And I do have copies of the responses I have if anybody would like to see them. Public Works Fleet Management, I have already covered that. Solid waste budget. So we've discussed this in solid waste meetings, we've discussed this in select board meetings. We still pay really good prices for disposal at Maine Waste Energy because obviously we got involved in that from the early beginning, and we're one of the, I don't know what the actual term is, member communities that created Maine Waste Energy, or MWAC at the time. So we're currently actually paying the same rate we were paying to dispose of mainstream waste as we were in 1990. However, they're progressively increasing that. So next year it'll be $47 a ton, it'll be $48 a ton. The big increases is coming from bulky waste, which is the bins next to the building. It's pretty much where everything that doesn't have another place goes. That has gone from $155 a ton to $175 a ton, and they are also charging us $25 for every mattress that's disposed of at the transfer station. So in any given week, we could average 5 to 10 mattresses. I haven't updated my count from last month, but we were well over, what did I say at the last meeting? 104 mattresses since July.
Do you have the numbers handy? And if not, we can figure them out later. What the increase in costs overall?
For the budget, like, or just the.
What did we spend for the transfer station?
I'd have to sit down and.
Okay, because I get that the household, what was the term you used?
Mainstream waste.
Mainstream waste, maybe I put it down, that the mainstream waste has stayed.
Yeah, it's averaged $1 increase a year.
But the question would be, how much more are we paying for these
other items? Yeah, I do have an updated sheet so that I could show you. I don't think it reflects the old prices, but it can give you the current prices. I don't think I've updated it with that 175 I may have, but I can get that for you.
But we would have seen a rather significant increase from 23 to 24.
So we typically see an increase every year anyways. However, one of the key drivers of increasing this budget was over the last 2 years, we've exceeded that budget by $20,000 to $25,000, which the fortunate thing with the way the transfer station was designed is you have that solid waste bank account. So if say we come in under budget, that excess funding goes into that account so that on a subsequent year, if you go over budget, that can cover that without having to ask the taxpayers for more money, as well as funding from scrap iron or any other income that would come in from cardboard and stuff like that goes into that account. So we've been fortunate enough to be able to offset those increases for 2 years from that account. But that's not a sustainable practice, obviously. Interest rates are going down. The interest rates over the last 2 years were just enough where it basically generated enough interest to cover those overages, or just shy. But interest rates are down to the threes somewhere now, so it's not going to generate as much interest. And iron revenues make a few grand a year, but not enough to cover those. So
has there been discussion in the solid waste committee about shifting costs of non-mainstream waste to those people who bring those items in? So for instance, if I were to bring in 25 mattresses this year, it doesn't cost me anything as an individual.
We have discussed, like, people get their updated stickers when they register their cars. We've discussed doing tickets for like a mattress a year, a set of tires a year, that sort of thing. But yeah, when it gets into some of the more complicated stuff, we just have questions about how we would enforce a lot of policies that we come up with, because it's just a crew that's there 2 days a week, kind of older gentlemen. Like, it's already tough, like policing the stickers on the dashboard.
Oh, I completely understand the challenge of it.
Yeah,
but just going forward, looking at numbers.
Yeah. No, it's been something we've been discussing, and the committee has asked Cam to keep tracking, like, the amount of mattresses and amount of tires that are being disposed of, because those bigger costs.
We have a camp in Livermore, and we have a sticker for their transfer station, and they charge for everything other than just regular
Yeah,
trash.
yeah,
By the pound, it's like you tore the rugs and everything out of the camp, you had to pay so much a pound for that.
that's another
Fine,
thing is,
Same thing.
I've been places where, they charge by the pound, but we don't have a scale there.
We don't want a subjective weight. We don't want somebody to be like, "Ah, I think that's 500 pounds." You know what I mean? So yeah, we're trying to way to balance the cost it would take to recoup those costs, and if it makes sense. The other thing that I brought up at the last meeting was, I hate to say it, I understand that people who own businesses in this town, like construction companies, like, they pay taxes in this town, but when they go out of town and they do a job and then bring that debris back and then dispose of it at our transfer station, we should be, one, how do you police it? But two, there should be like for a load of debris, it's X amount of dollars, to get rid of it. But again, it comes down to how do we manage it without having somebody there that's focused solely on doing that. I really don't think it's for the sake of the employees as well as us, is just sitting there with cash going around, no way to track it. Because I've lived in towns where that's what it was. The guy came out and said $15 and you handed it to him. There was no receipt and it went in his pocket. You wonder if the town got it or, so it's just to protect them and protect the town. And I think there's a lot that needs to be looked at in order to start doing that.
Yeah.
But until we get there, obviously,
And you
as
don't
costs go up.
create people tossing things on the side of the road. We saw Thursday, I got a haircut in Hartford driving down. We watched the guy go over the fence with a bag, throw it on Thursday and throw it into it was just a bag of trash.
One bag of trash, but
But it's like,
he's doing
how
it.
many people do that?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, Hartford has approached me and I forwarded on to them about Archie's was just recently sold to a new company. I met I believe the owner. He came in and was talking about all the things that they're looking to do, which is great for the company and will make them look better. New trucks, new bins, all that other stuff. But when I hear that, I also think our prices from Archie's haven't been increased in a long time. So that $154 that they charge us to tow that 5-ton bin of $155 a ton bulky waste, what's it going to be next year? So I haven't heard anything from them, and maybe they're not going to, push for those increases right away. But I think it's something that we should probably foresee because I'm a realist, and I can't imagine if you're making investments in a company like that those costs aren't going to rise.
yeah.
So until we can determine if and what we can charge for, we have to go with the realistic aspect of it. We discussed refrigerators and air conditioners. Some towns charge $25 a year refrigerator. We don't. We currently have a huge, massive pile of them there because we were in between vendors, or not vendors. We have one company that was coming in, taking out the refrigerant, and then they would actually pay us for the units because then they'd scrap the metal, which is whatever. It's easier for us because honestly, if we throw a refrigerator in the steel bin, we're getting pennies for it. So they were paying us, and then after Weldon left, we got a hold of them. They came, did some, and so we had to go back to our old vendor, and our old vendor, it's $10 per unit. So for every air conditioner, it's $10 to pull the refrigerant out. Then the stuff will go in the metal bin. So we do recoup some of it, but middle of the winter is kind of hard to get them to come and pick up, 200 refrigerators. And so they did come recently. I think they picked up 60 or so, but there's still a ton there. And a 10,000 piece, it's crazy. So those little things, brush disposal, we don't pay to get rid of brush, but we pay to have the brush hauled off. We went to that method years ago because of DEP requirements, and then the fire department having to monitor a burn pile and then cleaning up the ash, and it turned into a environmental headache. Plus you're paying guys to be there, for however long it takes to burn it. So
How much is the brush issue? Is it a large amount of money or?
it's $185 a load, so it's roughly 14 yards, depending on how it's
I was in Tennessee for a year living down there, and what they did was they just bought a commercial chipper, chipped all the brush up, and the townspeople would come and get the mulch.
Yep.
And there was no cost to carry it away. It was just the initial cost of a chipper, and open to town residents to go in and get free mulch for
We were talking about
their yard.
grant ideas for sustainability. That's a good one.
Thank you.
I've lived in a number
Yeah.
of states, so
Pain, but he comes up with good stuff.
Yeah, no, nice to
Well,
have some new perspective.
And typically, I'll say we have it hauled off 3 to 4 times a year. Obviously, December of 23 there was so much brush because of the storms, but and he'll typically haul off 11 to 12 loads.
and you
each
get,
time.
where's the payoff on the chipper and somebody to throw
Oh, right,
and
yeah.
the liability of somebody running that? You know, would it have to be a town employee and all that stuff, so.
Yeah, yeah.
Which we have those. Yeah, we could. But so that's basically the solid waste aspect of it. With that increase, obviously, Summer shares in that increase, so their share is going up as well. And they're already aware of what that's gonna be. They've got 35% of the budget, we've got 65. We just kind of have to go with what we've got. Can't shut the dump down. Municipal budget impact. So some of you may be aware, I may have told you already. I know, I think I may have mentioned it to you guys yesterday, or not yesterday, the day before. Municipal revenue sharing, that's a huge revenue line for us. Last year, we were fortunate enough to go up from 350-ish to 580 roughly. I use lower numbers or conservative numbers just in case there's a projection error, but so we had a huge increase, which helped us with the budget increase and made it so that we didn't have to, generate more tax dollars. Unfortunately, this year, the projections are coming out, we're looking at $100,000 decrease down to 475. So we're still higher than what we were 2 years ago. But
Take a hit.
if we left everything exactly the same, we were already $100,000 in the hole from the onset. I don't know the purpose behind it. The formula is kind of confusing to me. I tried looking it up and figuring it out. It's a little bit based off of population, a little bit is based off your state valuation. And then they come up with a number and what they anticipate they'll bring in, and that's how they come up with their formula. Obviously, at the state level, there's some budget increases and shortfalls they're talking about, so maybe that plays a part in it. I don't know. It's all a projection until we know. Local revenue projections show a modest increase of 14,000, helping to offset some revenue losses. Some of that is trust fund interest that helps offset the costs of like the library or the cemeteries. And then some of it is rec registrations and sponsorships. I think I increased that line by roughly $3,000. We've been gradually increasing the registration fees to cover uniform costs and increased equipment costs. So that's where some of that increase came from, but obviously 14,000 subtract 100,000 we're still in the hole. As far as the school and county budget is concerned, I haven't heard from county, I haven't reached out to them yet. And then the school, I just slapped on a 5% increase, which I think is eager. I think that the increases from the school and the county are probably going to be more than that. Last year, the county increase was 25%, school was over 11. I am urging residents to engage in the RSU budget process. I've shared the schedule with you. We've talked about it at the last meeting. The big focus should be the annual budget meeting that they hold at Mount Valley High School in Rumford on May 28th at, what's the time? 6:30. That's basically like the old school town meetings. You go there, you sign in, and you vote on the number that they give you, the budget that they give you. And then if it passes, that's what comes to us on June 10th when we say yes or no. So it's the last opportunity for that to be adjusted if people disagree with it or approve it if they agree with it. And that basically covers the gist of what's in the budget. We can go through it. The other day we were here for 3.5 hours. So, and we bounced all over the place. I'd recommend we just start from the beginning and then kind of skim through them and go over it. And I will try to keep us on the right screen on the computer as we talk.
Cameron,
Yes.
I'll watch it everything.
would it be difficult for you to find out approximately how many people attended last year's school?
From Buckfield.
No, overall.
Overall, it wasn't many. I could probably ask Erin. She probably knows, or Allison
Okay.
might know. I don't recall. I do know it was 5 people, I think, from Buckfield through.
But if
to
we
one
knew
number.
the
If there was
entire,
30 people there, we could gather 50 people from Buckfield.
right, at what point, you know, what number of
I can,
people to attend
Yeah.
would make the
I
impact?
can reach out to the school and ask.
Thank you.
All right, so I'll try not to like, if I hit something and somebody has a question, just interrupt me.
And it's my understanding that these workshops are mostly
For you,
for the community members, and if there's anybody who's, can they reach out? How are we set up?
you want to monitor Facebook?
I have Facebook Live up to see if anyone comments through that. Can't send anyone through Zoom, and then obviously throughout this process, our email inboxes are open as well.
So we as select board have meetings set up for us to go over this. So if there's any place where we don't need to go, just keep going, or anything that you want to share or discuss more of, because this is really about your input, your ideas, and anyone else out there. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Sorry to cut you off there, Kim.
And it's not just restricted to this workshop. If people have questions or follow-ups after the fact, my email, their email, anybody can reach out to us. And then obviously on the 11th, we'll start talking about it at the actual select board meeting.
Because this isn't our
Yeah.
budget, it's the
They-
community's budget, and the more input we can get, the more it can represent what people want.
So did you have a chance to review any of it after I gave it to you?
I,
Oh,
did you
okay.
wish I had? No.
I just figured I'd ask before we bore you with this.
I had a flu leak in my woodwork,
Turns.
Oh,
billowing smoke into my house.
that's
Which
nice.
became a priority.
Yeah.
I don't blame you. So as I hit on in my opening statement, the wages for general government, it's that 2.5% request that I had put in there. One line that did increase differently would be code enforcement. We've received numerous complaints, concerns about, illegal junkyards and other items that would require code enforcement interjection. And if the town is gonna approach those items, we need to make sure we're budgeting for them. The code enforcement officer has also made the same hourly rate since he started back in 2020, so I figured adding that $5,000 to that line could benefit both of those aspects, so that's why that number is higher. The elected officials line, I left the same. Each of them receives a stipend annually. There's 5 of them. They each receive $1,400 a year. Ballot clerks, I left the same primarily because we use the voting machine now, so it reduces the amount of time that we need to sit here. We don't have to be here till 6 in the morning. MSRS, for those that don't know, is the Main State Retirement. So we have employees that are already enrolled into it. And it's an obligation by the town that now that they're enrolled.
Can you kind of give us
I'm on the first.
okay.
And you-
Okay, MSRS.
No, nothing packet.
He gave us page 20 through 31.
Wait, maybe
Oh, it's out of order. Okay.
I had
it's just data.
here, why don't you?
Here's page 2, this must be page 1.
Okay, now we got it.
We're getting stuck, in case you're messed up, this one's actually stapled, so.
That was up, I have stapled that one.
Yeah. Oh,
But I didn't change the order.
right, so. It should have, yeah,
Does that one start on page 1?
Yes, it
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
I think I'm there
so the way.
now. That probably.
So back in 2013, the town meeting voted to participate in student state retirement, which we offer Plan AN. That plan every year, Maine PERS determines what that annual contribution is from both the employee and the employer. I think I outlined what next year, now I lost my word.
Yes, I had a question on that.
Yes,
You've got categories in the new structure, individual 90-10, I understand that. Employee and children is literally the employee and however many children are on the policy.
Yep.
Family would be even just with the spouse without kids.
Yeah, it's the same, whether it's employee or spouse or employee and family, it's the
The
same.
last company I worked for, they had another category.
Yeah, they,
So it was, employee alone, employee and spouse, or significant, because it was a liberal company.
yeah,
Employee, spouse and family, or employee and just family, there were.
so they do,
Categories.
they do have two categories on the sheet that shows the pricing, but if you look at the pricing,
It's the same.
it's exactly the
Okay.
same. So unfortunately for people who don't have kids, their price is the same as if they had 20 kids.
Right, so you're a family whether you have kids or not.
Right. But as far as the retirement aspect of it, the current for 2025, starting in July, the employer contribution rate is 9% of the salary and employee rate is 6.35. That changes every year. Sometimes it goes down. A couple of years ago, it actually went down. This year,
And they set those rates.
they set those rates. So that is what I've set aside there. There's the 3 full-time employees. Alyssa and I already have Main State Retirement, and then our new deputy clerk. They get one chance to opt in to participate. If they decline, they can never participate in it. So she's opted to participate too. So that's why that is. And last year I had budgeted for a partial coverage in case we had a new employee come in. So that's why the number isn't that much more than it is. And health insurance we've covered, so that would be, that price that's there is if you adopted what I proposed. If you don't, that number would be reduced to whatever the percentage would be.
But, and I think you talked about this at the last meeting. One of the challenges the town is facing in hiring experienced employees is that
Competitive, our insurance rates.
the town over,
Yeah.
salaries higher, benefits are better. And so in order to stay competitive,
The biggest struggle that we've had is essentially if anybody has children. That what I hear from those candidates is I can't afford to come work for you. I can't afford, because if a plow truck driver, depending on their experience, if they're newer or if they are experienced, our cap right now is $25 an hour for the plow truck driver. So they work 40 hours during the summer, during the week, whatever. Their current premium that they would pay on a weekly basis is $332. So you do the math,
Yeah.
and there's not a lot of take home after, taxes and everything else.
for employee and children.
So for them to participate in retirement, to be like, yeah, I want to do this for 25 years, or, you're vested after 5, so you at least get something at 65. But to do that and health insurance, I mean, that's pretty much what you're working for.
Can they opt out of this health insurance and do like the
Yes.
Affordable Care or Main State or?
Yes, they're free to opt out. We actually, in our personnel policy, and it's crazy kind of in the sense is if they opt out and can prove they have comparable insurance or a insurance that covers them, they get $100 in lieu of per month, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. If they took our insurance, they'd be paying $300 a week. But that's what's on the books as a policy, so they can opt out and take that $1,200.
Yeah. Some form of other.
Right, they need to prove that they have that insurance before we can start.
When younger healthy people opt to go with high deductibles and
Yeah.
all that.
And for those that don't know, our insurance is through the Maine Municipal Employees Health Trust, so it's what most municipalities use, and the towns that I entered or communicated with. That's what they were sharing was we use MMEHT and we cover X. And it always seems to be the same plan we have, which I guess that must have been the popular plan back in the day, but it is good insurance. Wow.
How many current employees are in the town?
You could be, how many full-time employees or how many employees?
Well, full-time and.
So current full-time, we've got 3 full-time employees for administration. And then I've got the public works foreman, the assistant foreman, and 1 public works laborer. So
So not many.
not many. We have an open position in public works for 1 other full-time position, which I've been trying to fill for well over 6 months.
And nothing in the fire department is full-time
No,
Oh, that's
per
volunteer.
diem.
or per diem?
Yeah, we have per diem coverage for rescue. We have per diem coverage during the week for fire, which is just 1 guy or girl here during the day. Yeah, that's it. I mean, all total on average, the town has roughly 74 employees, but most of them, there's a few that work maybe one shift every few months and that also includes ballot clerks that come in because they're compensated for their time, but they're considered employees.
Okay, thank you.
Where were we at? We were on insurance. I should just read the screen and it'll make it easier so I don't mess this up. All right. So I've kind of broken down everything as far as pricing wise for the insurance. So if anybody has questions about that, this is on our website. It's on the budget committee page, so
Bob's in the waiting room.
we'll let them in. So if anybody wants to read up more on that, this budget is available online. We have copies here. Looking at FICA Medicare, obviously that's going to increase with wages and that's going to be the same across any department. So it's the town shares 6.2% for FICA for Social Security, 1.45 for Medicare. Mileage reimbursement. So this is basically any trainings that I or anybody in administration goes to. Most of them are in Augusta, some are in Portland. I typically don't go to Bangor unless it's something I absolutely have to. I go to AVCOG meetings. So that reimburses the mileage, the IRS mileage, which is 70 cents a mile in 2025. As well as attorney visits, because it costs a lot more to have the attorney come to us. So other employee benefits is kind of a weird line, but the town has on our personal policy handbook, we give out the cost of a turkey on Thanksgiving to full-time and part-time employees as well, which usually I think is like $10. And then Christmas, they get a $20 gift card. So that's included in there, but also the paid family medical leave, 0.5% that the town shares that cost in is now included in this line. Rather than create another line, I just included it in there. As well as my dental insurance coverage, which is per my contract.
So you're opting to pay the 0.5%, not the full 1%, the employees paying the other 0.5%?
Yep.
Okay, because some businesses are paying the full 1%.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can tell you last year in the budget, through all the things that were going on, it's been out there for so long that I just kind of slipped my mind. I didn't budget for it at all. It's not a huge amount of money, but I mean, for people that are living paycheck to paycheck, even the 0.5%.
Wow, that's what I did in our current budget at church, was we're paying the whole 1% rather than charging people the 0.5%.
Yeah, we're doing that at a nonprofit in Norway, CB as well.
Yeah.
Just cover the whole 1%.
So the way I base that, and I mean, the board can make that change. The reason I went with the 50/50 is because I had heard, because I'm on the listservs for Town and City Managers Association. And so a lot of times when new things like this come in, it's, hey, what's your town doing? What's your town doing? And I try to follow the consensus so that we're all kind of, I mean, if they're doing it and it's working, then, but most of it's not considerably noticeable, especially for like rescue personnel who work a 12-hour shift. It's pennies. It's more like the full-time employees are like, oh, well, there goes another $20.
Yeah.
But that's always something for us in the future. Supplies, I brought office supplies down a little bit. I try to be cognizant of what we're purchasing. But then again, prices go up. I just try to buy in bulk when I can. Obviously our biggest expense is paper. Only in 2025 our municipalities burn as much as they do, but we have so much retention that we have to have. So we do have I do a lot of stuff digitally and keep it on the server, but at the same time we need paper backup. So postage I kept the same. That includes all certified letters we send out for lien work, which equates to roughly two notices, right? They get the initial 30-day notice saying you have 30 days to pay or place a lien. That has to be sent out certified. And then on the flip side, after 18 months or before 18 months is up, at 30 to 45 days, we have to send another certified letter letting them know that the foreclosure is pending. That's roughly right now, it's like $10 a letter. Ever since I've been here, it's been anywhere from the initial notices has been roughly 120. And then at the tail end, it's usually like 80, but it can always fluctuate. And then if you screw up on the notifications, you got to send them out again and it'll also be certified. So that's what that line's for. And obviously tax bills.
And I'm assuming you had ample in the budget for this year, because the post office seems to be going up and up and up and up and up, like at least once, not twice a year.
I think before we meet on the 11th, and I think I need to make a note of this because this came up at the last meeting, was checking where I'm at on that postage line.
Just because, I mean, they're not jumping up a cent while they're jumping. Yes. So,
And they've jumped how many times in the last year?
yes,
Gone up
yes.
3 times, I think, in the last 12 months.
It's crazy.
think so.
So with the amount that you're talking, the numbers of letters that you have to send out, I can just add up as long as we've got enough.
Well, and I want to be real too, right? And this came up at the last meeting is as things get more pricey and budgets get tighter, especially with, pending tariffs and all this other stuff and what's going on. We don't know how long that's going to last, but sometimes it's a struggle for people to pay their taxes and they have to delay it and that may increase the number of letters that have to go up. So I will review that.
Just thinking, because you've got it pretty level there.
Office equipment. So I knocked $2,500 off of this. This includes toner and everything for our computers or any other office equipment that we need. I also typically would use, if I needed to replace a computer, I'd put it in this line, but we're looking good in administration. My computer's the oldest, but it was replaced right before I came. It's working fine. All the office computers are relatively new within the last 18 months, so I don't anticipate having to replace any of them anytime soon. Election supplies, I increased that a little bit. Again, supply costs, we do print off the ballots for the election plus pay for programming in the machine. So that's where that comes out of. Town report, $1,100 has been enough to do it the last 2 years. So I think it'll be sufficient this year. We print those locally. Training line, I kept the same. That basically any of the certifications that the clerks take or courses that the clerks take comes out of there as well as myself. All of us, I'm a certified treasurer through, I hate acronyms.
There's so many.
The Maine Municipal Tax Collector and Treasurers Association. And in order to keep that certification up, I have to take a certain amount of training every few years. The clerks, if they want to be certified as certified town clerks through MTCCA or whatever that acronym is, they have certain requirements they have to do. So, and it's all beneficial to the town, obviously, vital statistics, Moses, all stuff we want to stay current on as things change. Dues and membership, that's not just our dues, it's also the town's dues. So we have AVCOG, which went up slightly this year. That's $3,000. What we pay to AVCOG, we get back tenfold from benefits as far as planning, ordinances, subdivision, subdivision stuff. Yeah, basically anything land use related, they help us out. Solid waste regarding stuff, it's an invaluable resource. MMA, the same thing. If not just for the legal advice, they won't speak to a specific item, but if the board has a question in generality about elections or about a warrant article or, what can the town do? How does they offer that service at no cost other than what we pay our annual memberships for. And then the professional memberships, those are basically the town and city managers association for me, the tax collector and treasurer one for me, and then the city clerks, that's roughly $1,000. But again, that provides them with the resources when they don't have what they don't have locally to reach out and have a bunch of people that can pick them up. So, and then the HRA admin fee, we do offer, the HRA kicks in for anybody that has health insurance that covers the employee's cost up to the deductible or whatever. And there's money set aside in the reserve fund that covers that. Honestly, I haven't spent any money out of it in the last 4 years, so we've got pretty healthy pieces. Legal expenses, I go back to what I said about code enforcement. If we're gonna, and I still don't think that's enough, but it's enough to get started. If we get into a really rough litigation case that's gonna require the town getting involved and removing stuff, it could cost us $50,000 plus. But I think for most cut and dry, just getting the court order to order them to clean up or whatever, our lawyer estimated roughly $3,500 per case. So it'll get us started, but that's where we're at. bonding. That's a requirement of me and the two clerks, so that's roughly what we pay a year to bond them, that protects the town in case something happens. Audit services, as you know, I've been working with RHR Smith on the last 4 or 5 years. They've done a tremendous job. I'm still waiting on the final results or whatever, but that price has obviously consistently gone up year over year. Whenever they do an audit, they're on site for 2 days. I mean, I work with them. They tell me what they need and I bring it to them and we scan it all up and then they go back to their office and they work on it. That's one area I would not recommend sending out an RFP and trying to find somebody new, because this is a firm that, one, isn't taking on any new clients, and two, just dealt with what I would call a bomb of, we were about 3 years behind on audits originally. And then they also carried over into the next two. Like, they finally are getting the town back to where it needs to be. Last thing I want to do is try looking for somebody else. I think they've been amazing. And I would recommend changing from them.
Forget that.
So I basically increased that line slightly to account for increases based off what I've seen on the other years. So that's why the line's higher. Deed services, so that's everything we pay Oxford County, filing liens, discharging liens, any of the town's deed work if we get a parcel of land and need to do that or whatever. And then they charge us on a quarterly basis for processing the transfers. So that's all included in there. And just as a side note, when a lien does go on a piece of property, that fee is assessed to that account. So when they pay that off, they pay for that $19, but we have to budget for it. Contracting services, that's our IT contractor coming in and, making sure IT is not crashing. Technology, I broke down really the cost of the different associated services that we use. The antivirus software, that's for 7 PCs. It came up with $1,000, but currently we don't have antivirus, or we do. We have old antivirus software on our computers from NDS days. We haven't used NDS since 2022. So guess what? Software is not doing anything. Because that was paired with our subscription.
Most IT people, some of the private companies I've worked for will tell you that the basic Windows antivirus software that comes with the newer PCs is just as good and it's constantly updated. But
And I'm always conflicted on that, right? Because at home I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But I'm using other people's stuff, and
This was,
I have 2 running in concurrent.
Yeah.
On my home computer, so
it's always good to have different layers. You know what I mean? One of the other good things, well, one of the things that's listed in here too is site backup for our server, right? Our server has the last 30 years of computer data on it. It's close to 7 terabytes of data, and we don't have any backup on it right now. So paying to have it housed offsite, the price is relatively affordable. To do the dual backup, have on-site and off-site, the hardware cost is quite a bit. So I figured having some sort of backup is good, and I figured off-site is best. So that's why I put that in there for that. And that'll also back up our assessing server, which has all the stuff that we just paid $150,000 to get updated. And some people might think it's silly to have one set of software for our assessing stuff, but then also utilize Trio for it as well. Again, 2 systems. It's amazing how many times something can happen in one system, and having it 2 locations, it's easier to fix.
Insurance is important.
yes, yeah.
So that line's basically the same. It went down slightly, and I hit on it at the last meeting. The reason it went down was last year we put a random number for communication, which I ended up settling on Constant Contact, which has worked well for the 70 people that are signed up for it. I wish more would sign up for it, because it's a quick way to get something out there. And if somebody sees Town of Buckfield in their email, they don't typically delete it, they actually read it. And I've already heard from multiple people that said, oh, I found out about the meetings because you emailed us, not on Facebook, not on our website, through that. So
that's the email
Is that
this
the-
meeting.
is that the email that you got? Yeah, that's what it came from. And it's a quick way for me to hit a lot of people really quick. So that's worked out, and so far, because of the limited use we have, I had $500 on there. I won't spend that much this year, but if it grows, we will need that.
So if we kind of start grassroots and feel, hey, you ought to be on this so that you can keep in step with what's going on.
I have a QR code too. I've got it sitting over on the tables.
That's what we scanned out on the.
You can also do it for other people, if someone is, you just ask,
Yeah, like,
if they want you
just
to,
by saying, we do this, and that's how we found out.
right, so if somebody feels that they can't do it, or you can say, what, if you give me your name and
Yeah,
if you want me to do this for you. And just enter it, and then they're all set.
The last meeting I discussed, like, I haven't used it a ton. I've used it for roads are closed, or roads are gonna be closed, or this meeting, like, I don't want to bombard people's mailboxes with a bunch of frivolous information. So I try to use it for the important things so that when it shows up, people open it.
Yeah. and for those of us who don't run by the sign often, or don't always go into towns, it's very helpful.
Yes.
We stick up where we are, and
Yeah.
people are in all different regions. That's really helpful.
Yeah. I think it's been really well, and it's cool because it gives me the statistics as far as the open rate, so I can see most of the time I send an email, it's a 90% open rate, so that's pretty good.
People are really,
Yeah.
those who have signed us really well.
So I want to keep with that. I think it's working, and hopefully it'll only get better, and then maybe I can utilize it more and cross train the clerks on when and whatever to use it. So
Okay.
moving on to historic preservation, we've always had $2,000 listed in that line. I moved it to a little further down. You'll notice I put historic preservation reserve fund appropriation. The reason I say that is $2,000 doesn't get you a whole lot of historic preservation. And I think the town should just gradually put that money together, because we've got books dating back to the mid 1700s, the proprietors books, all that stuff that digitizing that's going to be important, for we've got better records than a lot of small towns in Maine, and I want to make sure that we continue to have those records. So I'm just asking, instead of just having it in a line and expecting me to do $2,000 worth of preservation a year, put it into the reserve account so that we can come up with a plan and send, a few books off to have them digitized, and then be done with it in sessions. So
I'm assuming when you call it a reserve account, it's a carryover. If it's not spent, it goes to the next.
Yeah, and it's designated
For
for
that.
it's not
preservation.
We have that in our,
we have a reserve fund. We have a reserve fund policy that was established this year that specifically identifies our reserve accounts and their purposes, so that money, if it's appropriated there properly. Then
anything that. There could be a large expense coming few years down the road. You want that carryover going, so when that expense hits, there's money there to cover it.
So we currently have a rescue one. It's a rescue department capital asset reserve. We've got a fire department capital asset reserve, because they are still technically two different departments. We now have a municipal center capital improvement reserve, because this building needs some work and it's going to cost us some money. We've got an emergency contingency reserve, and we did that last year. We changed that, or the town changed that, from raising $20,000 a year or $10,000 a year for an emergency and then having lapse to fund balance. We just put it in a reserve so that we don't have to keep appropriating it. If we use it, then we'll raise an appropriation for it. But we've got various ones for different grant programs that we had received in the past that are there. So there's a considerable amount of these, about 13 and 14, all focused on specific purposes that
It's just,
and then obviously as it accumulates interest, it just increases that amount. Utilities, I just increased $100. That's for phone, fax, and internet. We had a slight adjustment on that, and it fluctuates. I didn't realize that in 2025, businesses still pay per minute when they call somewhere.
Seriously.
Yeah. So it fluctuates. I did an average, and that's how I came up with that number.
so. These are cell phones given to the employees?
No, this is our phone, fax, and internet here.
Oh, okay.
The only person that has a town cell phone is me, and it costs the town probably $300 a year. So, and that's, at first I didn't want one, but then being able to separate me from town manager me and FOIA requests and stuff like that, it's much more advised to do it that way. So I don't conduct town business on my personal cell phone. So you'll see the admin portion of general government, that is an increase. Looking through that, the bulk of the increases were code enforcement, legal, and then the suggested or the recommended increases to the health insurance, and then obviously paid family medical leave. So that's why that number is increased over last year. Insurance, that's also part of general government. Workman's comp has consistently stayed relatively flat. I think $30,000 was enough. 2025 is 28,000. Our employees are safe, knock on wood. You know, they don't get hurt very often. When they do, it's very minimal. So having that good rate record with them goes a long way, and we usually get some funding back at the end of the year because of where we're at. And that's all through MMA. And then accident insurance, that's primarily driven by our rec program. You know, that's youth having that extra insurance, accident insurance on the kids if something happens, as well as our fire department. They have a limited benefit for accident insurance if they're hurt or killed. That's roughly like $400 a year. Property casualty and auto, I had budgeted for a 12.5% increase, and then after I printed this out and sent it off to you, Kai's came back to me and said they're happy to say that it was only looking like a 12%. So the 0.5% adjustment, I just recommend leaving it there because again, it's an estimate and it could come in different. Assessing, that went down a little bit because I recalculated everything. Manny's got one certification to get his final CMA certification. There's 5 different modules. And what I agreed with him when I hired him was that once you get a certification, I'd pay him $25 an hour because he's a new CMA. CMAs at the state level are making considerably more than that. The in-house assessor conducts all the administrative functions, so the data entry, verifying that the accounts are correct, making sure that acreage is correct, taking the applications, communicating with the public. If there's an error or whatever, processing abatements. As far as pickup work, I've spoken with him. He wants to do the pickup work. If that changes or there's too much pickup work, that's fine because KRT has told us that they will do those by the parcel. You know, we pay them by the parcel, which would equate to about the same amount of money, whether we're paying him hourly or them. So I believe that amount is correct for what we have. Tax maps have been updated or are in the process of being updated. We had them digitized at a relatively affordable price. It was like $2 to $3 a parcel, which we only have 1,400 parcels, so it came up really nice. The company's out of Colorado, but we have regular meetings with them, and I think the final product's going to be really good. Eventually, I'd like to see that somehow incorporated online so people could just go and do it, but that's an added cost. Just having them digital and having them uploaded since 2021 will be a win for us. So. I only included the $1,000, and that's basically lot splits. If somebody, you know, throughout lot, I don't think we'll have to have that much, but printing the big maps out costs money annually, as well as paying the contractor to update the splits. I'm not a GIF guy, and I don't want to learn how to do it. I can do enough to get me in trouble, and I don't want to mess up the tax map, so I will gladly pay them $5 parcel to update when somebody like it. Yes, sir. Other than that, I did add in a mileage line for him because, again, I've paid him mileage to go to Augusta and take his testing, but also when he needs to do his research and courses, you know, he has to travel for that, and it's for the town. He doesn't work for any other town, so that's included in there. The paid family medical leave is in there. This is not a full-time position; it's a part-time position, so there's no health insurance or retirement. General supplies or anything you might need, you know, as far as measuring tools or anything you need out in the field. And as you can see, that's a little bit of a drop over last year. And then I believe this is the last section of general government, the municipal center. Skimming through it, I decreased the maintenance and repair line, kinda. I have $30,000 in there, which, you know, roughly slowly doing work like flooring, or, you know, replacing windows and having the town share of that. That would come out of that line, as well as annual inspections of the chairlift and any other requirements that we have. I took the $10,000 that I took out of that, and I put that further down as a municipal center reserve fund appropriation. So in case we don't spend the $40,000 this year, 10,000 of that will go over towards building up whatever we need. we got a grant from the Community Resilience
Community Resilience Project.
Partnership. Couldn't remember the fee, for $50,000 to replace 12 windows in the town office. We need to replace 77 windows in the town office, but the grant capped out at 50. So the quote we got last year was roughly 65,000. So the town would have a $15,000 share in replacing those windows. I submitted a request through Susan Collins' office for congressionally directed spending. It made it past the committee and it was going there, and I don't know where it stands right now. I haven't heard from them, but if we were to get that, that would cover all the windows in the building. The town would have to come up with roughly 90,000, which includes that 15,000 that I just talked about. So 90,000 for replacing 77 windows at a cost of $370,000 is, a huge savings to the town of Buckfield. I've heard everything from why don't we just get rid of the town office and build at this point, we're so far into this, we've put a $58,000 roof. We've had, insurance claims. We got a brand new boiler system downstairs that was $50,000. Between the flooring and the repairs, we've got another close to $100,000. I mean,
Is that why the heating fuel went down?
yeah, we went to propane from oil, and we send out RFPs now on an annual basis to maximize our cost, I guess you'd say. So in May, June, we'll send out another contract or RFP request and hear from companies on what it was. This winter, we were paying roughly $1.47 because we don't pay the taxes, obviously, but that has brought the cost down considerably from when we were using oil. And I'm on a list again, this building is hard to heat. And we can't just shut a room off because what happens when we shut a room off, Bob? We're here till 9 o'clock tearing up car because the room is flooded. So yeah. So all total general government, last year was $513,090. That includes everything from assessing to insurance to obviously us, in this building. This year, the increase, it's looking at 547,000. That's not a considerable increase when you factor in everything that was in there. And then when we get further down into revenues, you'll see what administration brings into the town for revenue anyways. But we'll get to that. So fire and rescue, I've kind of talked this in a generality a little bit because it's a long, lengthy one and sometimes can stir up the debate. But as we discussed at the beginning of the meeting, the firefighters have made minimum wage, since I've been here. There's a lot of training requirements. These guys are out, if they want to get up to firefighter 1 and 2, that's a considerable amount of training that they have to do. Or to get a fire science degree, if they go that route, that's a 2-year degree, all that stuff. And currently there's really no reward or incentive for them to get that certification to serve the community and offer that experience and expertise. So rather than go with the stipend and the minimum wage for officers and paying everybody the same, I've put together estimates based off of call hours and they're rough as far as, I don't think the chief's going to work 500 hours, but it's there because he's at the higher rate. So averaging everything out, it comes out right. But I have a staggered pay scale, which still isn't out there. $18 I have listed as the 50th percentile for firefighter 1 and firefighter 2. I can tell you, looking at the 2024 salary survey, that's not accurate. But that's basically if you had firefighter 1 and 2, and you weren't an officer, your rate would be $18 an hour. And this can still be played with or adjusted accordingly or whatever, but this was my idea, because the fire chief had given me a total and I wanted to see if it came up to what my total was, and it came up with a $375 as was. So that's my plan there. Eliminate the stipends, pay based on rank and certification, and get people engaged and involved and you definitely can't pay your mortgage off of that, and nobody's working full-time for fire rescue, but we want to make sure we have the manpower that we need when we need it.
Yeah. Incentive is in effect.
And I've been talking about this for 3 years, so we're finally getting to the point where this is where I'm at. FICA, Medicare, employee benefits, that's a family medical leave that all adjusted because of that. Turnout gear. So the cost of turnout gear has shot through the roof in the last 24 months. Obviously, it's highly specialized gear, it's expensive, and it does have a shelf life for interior firefighters, which is 10 years, I believe. And a lot of our gear is nearing, I think we got a lot of it on a grant. We bought a lot years ago, and we do have some newer sets, but as we get new members, we don't have a set of gear to give them. So that's what we're up against. We can't dress somebody that comes, and they can't just run with regular. So we did increase that line.
How do the new standards that are trying to be put in affect how we store and?
I have spoken to Susan Cullen's office. I have sat at meetings with town managers and city managers and discussed that with her office and other representatives, and I'm hoping that they don't push that on municipal. I get it's safety.
Right.
But
we don't have separate storage capabilities in this building to separate the gear, because that's one of the big things for smaller communities is getting the
carcinogens. Is that what you're talking about? Carcinogens and stuff that are on the gear, having them stored in a
storage area.
Yeah, we would have to build walls.
Okay.
And
And we're not set up.
that's not current. Our storage, we've got, I don't want to say called lockers. It's kind of like this open, and each one has the hooks and stuff from the Senate. It's out in the open.
Right.
So, I mean, we do have a decon area, so we have a laundry room over there. So our gear does get washed.
But they're putting those regulations in that even if it's clean, it hasn't been, it's got to be still separated out. That new guidelines that is ridiculous.
It's insane, right? Because it could be clean in the morning, and after the first call, it's messed up, and now what, you keep it separate, but you get another call. It's just,
Yep.
and we definitely don't have the funding, and I feel bad for towns like Sumner to have a volunteer fire department. They don't have the resources for that, and even us in like a hybrid setting, we couldn't afford to have two sets of gear for every firefighter. So sometimes they're forced to wear the same gear that hasn't been washed, and if they're good about it and they go and they wash their gear after their call, then it's good. But sometimes you back-to-back calls, you can't do it right away. So it's, I assume Auburn probably has dual sets for their firefighters, but I mean, that's a career fire department. This is not.
Right.
So we did increase that line for that. That would buy us roughly 3 sets of gear. So that gives you
maybe new, one new person and a couple replacements is a.
Yeah, if we have some that are nearing the end, we have to replace theirs. So if we get a new member, which, I mean, let's face it, people aren't knocking our door down to be a firefighter. But when we do, I'd say one a year, and we wouldn't typically give them brand new gear until they were certified as an interior firefighter. We can use some of the older gear for, the guys that are just rolling hose and outside the scene or whatever, but the new gear will go to people who, complete their certifications.
And the chief isn't here and he elaborated for us that it's about, for a full set is about $4,700. And then the helmets on their own are just under 500.
Yeah, so just shy of 3 cents a year. But moving on to communications equipment, we kept that same with tools and miscellaneous, and that could be anything. We have tools that we buy that are intended to last forever, but fires are fires, and sometimes tools get destroyed or lost or whatever. Let's see, utilities. You'll notice I pulled everything. Actually, I'll go to training. Training at the 2,000. We increased training for both fire and rescue, primarily because the cost of training has gone up. On the rescue side of things, an EMT class, the basic EMT class is now $1,600. It used to be 1,000, and it was cheaper than that, long before that. But you may ask, well, why is the town paying for that kind of training? It's a license they can take somewhere else, because we have this great thing, and we have a new EMT come in, and we pay for the training. We have them sign an agreement, and they commit to 2 years with us. And if they leave before that, they pay us back. So we have to raise those funds to be able to offer that. And it's been a really good program and helped us keep and basically increase the certification level of several of our providers, which is nice. Benefits them, but it benefits the town too. So same with fire. That's there. I only increased it by $500. The utilities for fire have been pulled out. I've created a separate account or division of the department, which is called Public Safety Facility. And that's because every time I write a check for phone, fax, internet, heating, electricity, I have to put 2 entries in, and it's very time consuming. So by pulling all that out, like the municipal center, I can just do one payment for that building. So that's why those aren't there. The only difference is the internet. Fire and rescue both have MiFi units in the trucks so that they can run their reports and submit their reports right from the scene if they need to, as well as any other stuff that they need. Fire vehicles, we hit on this really good the other day. Our trucks are old. So as they get older, they require more maintenance. Yes, they're garaged and they're taken care of and they're washed sometimes 4 times a day. But engine 3 we purchased in 2003, new, with an expected life or a life expectancy of 20 to 25 years. You can see in 2003 we paid, well, you can't see, I'm going to read it to you. $247,000 is what we paid for engine 3. If we were to replace that now, it would be closer to 700,000. Tank 1 we bought, I think in 2008. It's or 2007. It is a 2007, same life expectancy. We paid 243,000 roughly for it, and the current replacement cost is anywhere from 450 to 500,000. Truck 2 we're good on. We just bought that truck. That truck has a life expectancy of 30 years. It's a 2005 chassis, but we've replaced frame rails. We've gone through it. It's been refurbed. That truck, had we bought that brand new, would have been at 1.2 million. We paid 213,000 to refurb that truck. The one recommendation that the chief did have, not necessarily this year, but in the future, is the one area we skipped on when we refurbed it because we were trying to save money, was we probably should repaint that truck. But that doesn't have to happen today or tomorrow. It's just to maintain it and keep the corrosion and stuff that'll happen over time. They do wash them regularly, so I'm not super concerned about it, but tank 1, I know we've replaced steps and stuff that have corroded. The utility, that's just a pickup truck. We purchased that at the state auction, relatively inexpensive. I think we paid $6,800 after paint and body services. It's in good shape, but if we were to buy that setup brand new, it would be roughly $100,000. UTV came in on a grant for the Firefighters Association. I believe it cost roughly $10,000. Had a 20-year life expectancy, and he's got 2013 is when they got it. That obviously helps in the woods fire we had over in South Pond. You know, if there's a search and rescue thing up on the street, it helps us get there where we can't get our trucks. That would cost over $20,000 to replace now. And then SCBA's, he has his SCBA's listed. So those have a 20-year life expectancy. This is 2019. We got them in 2019 on a grant. We paid $49,000 for those. Those are all our air packs for firefighting. Now, just a few years later, if we were to replace all of them, it would cost us $70,000. So that's just some information in there so that everybody has an idea of that. But as far as the trucks are concerned, as they get older, we're just putting more maintenance into them. We take really good care of them. We're constantly doing services, and you know, things wear out over time. So we're trying to make sure they last as long as they can. So that's why I've increased that line by $7,000, because we obviously don't have a lot of this with repairs, unexpected repair. Fire equipment, that's annual hose testing, as well as fire extinguisher inspections, any other ladder inspections, things that we need to do that comes out of that line. And then this $10,000 that we're asking for here, we're short 2 packs. We need 2 more packs. When we purchased the other truck, obviously covered packs, that'll get us where we need to have all the packs that we need. West Paris has quoted us $44,999 each. So we'd like to purchase those next year. I've put that off for a year and just get that taken care of. So that's what that capital expense line is. That's not coming out of capital reserve. That would be an appropriation to pay for it. So all in with the wage increases and the adjustments to maintenance and stuff, that line or that set division of public safety has gone from 148 to 178. We have contracts with Hartford, which we're currently renegotiating, which brings in a small amount of revenue to offset that amount.
Because Hartford has no fire, not Hartford, correct, some that have.
moving on to rescue, obviously you can see the wage difference. So the rescue department we had 5 years ago is a totally different rescue department than what we have now. We have awesome providers. We just don't have all the local providers that we used to have. Most of my employees live in Poland, Paris, Oxford, Mechanic Falls. I got some that live in Rumford. I've got some that live in Portland. So the old school pay on call wages of $4 an hour, it's out the window. It's just, it's happening. We only have one shift a week right now currently. That is an on-call shift and it's only for drivers. Basically we have a provider on call. Or we have a provider at the station, and then if we get a call, we'll tone out for a driver, whether that's fire or one of our drivers. And then they'll come in, they'll get paid $4 an hour while they're staying sober and, you know, being ready to take the call. But once they clock in or they respond to that call, they'll start getting paid whatever their wages. The rest of them, it's all provider. We usually have 2 providers on at any given time. We don't have very many drivers anymore. And we prefer that because if we're paying for somebody, we want somebody that can provide the care. We do have drivers that are working on licensing up, but not as many as we did in the past. So the current EMT wage is $17.11. I think. Do we have it on here? No.
27.
So
That's the proposed, that's for paramedics. So the basic EMT, this is, if you look at the 2023 MMA salary survey, the 50th percentile is laid out. So that's the mid-range, right? Paramedic hourly rate in 23 was $26.50. In 2023, we were paying $18 and some odd cents for a paramedic. So we've increased it slightly. I think the paramedics currently make roughly 20, I don't have it in front of me, but 21, maybe 20. It was 2060 last year. So it's a little over 21 because all we did was a cost of living adjustment last year. I put this one off for 2 years. It needs to be discussed and it needs to be looked at because we just don't have the local people. And there's not a huge amount of people out there, right? No matter who we're going to get, we're sharing people, right? People that work at Pace, people that work at North Star, wherever, United, they're the same people that are working here. And if we're going to make sure our shifts are covered, we need to make sure that they're not worried about paying their bills because they took 24 hours here as opposed to going and making, you know, $40 an hour over there. So this isn't obviously getting them to their normal rate of what they're making elsewhere, but it's a proposal that gets them closer and they can feel a little bit better about, you know, coming here. Our call volume has increased. It has begun to increase. One of the areas that we had talked about and have been talked about for years was transfers. Transfers don't exist as they did before. Which was kind of a sore subject for some people in town. They didn't understand why we were sending our ambulance and our crew to go pick somebody up somewhere and take them to a hospital in Massachusetts or wherever. The reason we did that was because if we had a crew to do it, we're billing by the mile, we're billing for the service, and it's money that's coming back into the town, which helps us pay for rescue. There's still a few here and there that we get and that we'll do. We'll never send a transfer crew out without having a crew covering the towns.
What's the demographics? I know in Maine, we have a lot of older people throughout the state. What are the demographics? Like usually your older population,
We have
one of them.
we have a very older, but I don't say old, but we have an older population in Buckfield as well as Hartford and Sumner, where we have contracts with. Some of those older people live very, very far out, you know, so if we get a call there, you know, it's a drive to get there.
The
But
tendency would be to stay at home, probably in a rural setting more than
yeah,
go into a facility. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of people don't want to go to a facility.
No.
They want to stay in their house and so we do get a lot of those calls. And it's good that we have that service because I think that if we didn't, if we tried to approach other options, which may not even be options at this time, the town has looked at it in the past and it's been extremely expensive. Plus you lose the revenue that offsets that cost. But you're also looking at ambulance, you know, waiting 45 minutes for an ambulance. So, I mean, you're talking life and death in some of these situations.
So I guess I'm just thinking this is worthwhile. But to put some
We don't have a lot of services in Buckfield, but the services that we do have, um. They're important, in my opinion, and this is my opinion. Others can have theirs, but before I was involved in the town, I was one of the critics of rescue and, I'm young, I'm healthy, why, but being here for almost 3 years now, I definitely see the value and I definitely see the appreciation from the people that they help.
There's a trade-off. I mean, older people use the rescue, but younger families use the schools and we all pay, we all pay in.
Exactly.
We don't use everything, but we use our share of whatever.
Just like the refrigerators at the transfer station. I've never gotten rid of a refrigerator, but we're all paying for it. So that's where this pay scale came from, and it was based off of, I basically looked at the schedule of how many hours we have coverage. I took those hours, I took the average rate, because obviously sometimes we have EMTs working and not paramedics. Sometimes we have paramedics working and not an EMT. My average is lower, but it all usually balances out in the end. We have 4 or 5 paramedics right now. The majority of our people are either basic EMTs or advanced EMTs. So this is the figure that I came up with for that, and that's why that number is so much higher than last year. Again, I tried to talk about this for 2 years, hoping people would anticipate it was coming rather than throw it all at them out of nowhere. FICA obviously increases because of that, same with Medicare. Those costs associated would obviously increase those lines. Office equipment, gas, diesel, burnout, again, that's for them, it's, work shirts, something that says Buckfield Rescue on it. We don't buy as much for them as we do for fire, but that's because fire's coats are insanely expensive. Communications equipment has stayed the same. Medical equipment, we just recently started having to pay to fill our med boxes, so that's added costs with that. Stacy had hit on that a lot of our medical supplies, it doesn't come from the United States of America. It's the same, some does, some doesn't, but you have to anticipate those increased costs associated with whatever's going on in the world. And we don't know where that's going to be next year, so we have to budget for that. That also includes, we've got 1 more year on our ProCare service contract for one of our pieces of equipment. And then that'll fall off, but what else? Training. I hit on the training and what the town gets back for offering that training. That's a great program, but costs of the classes have gone up. So if I can take 4 basic EMTs and turn them into advanced EMTs and have them for 2 years, that's a good trade-off and investment for the town. Everything else is the same. Rescue billing. It's funny because if you look at this, you'll notice the rescue revenue this year is projected to be lower than last year, primarily driven by those transfers that aren't available anymore. When we adjusted that last year, we never recalculated the billing line. So we actually projected less than what we had anticipated this year, which isn't a big deal because if you underspend in one line, it'll, as long as it's within public safety, it'll take care of it. But I've recalculated it based on the 5.5% that they get for everything that they collect. That's not, I get that question all the time. It's not what we bill out. It's 5.5% of what goes into our bank account. ALS, that's a big jump. I think Stacy said we had 55 ALS calls last year. Which out of 400 and something calls, that's not crazy. So ALS is when they need a paramedic, depending on what the call is, it's required. So if that's the case, like Auburn, if we call Auburn, because we don't have a paramedic, because again, we only have 4 to 5. They also have full-time jobs, so we don't always have that paramedics. We'll call Auburn or Turner or Pace, and then they'll provide the paramedic. We'll bill for the call when they're on our truck, but they just recoup that cost. So Pace, it's not even Pace anymore, it's Main Health, EMS, whatever. It hasn't traditionally charged for that, but where Main EMS has started charging for filling med boxes, I anticipate at some point they're going to start charging services when they call for that. So we just took Auburn's rate of $100 per call, multiplied it by the number of calls, and we got that. Now, we also provide mutual aid to Turner, and Turner does to us. They don't charge us, and it's a trade-off. We'll provide them a paramedic and vice versa. We don't get a bill. Who knows if that'll ever change? But if it ever does change, it would work the same way. If we bill, So if Maine Health starts charging us $100 for ALS, they do call us for ALS sometimes because they don't have a paramedic available. We will bill them back $100 and recoup some of that money. We haven't gotten to that point, so we have nothing to project. And I hope they stop. They don't charge, but everybody's charging for everything. So that's where that number came from. Utilities have all been pulled out, just as I explained. We'll cover that after. And then the 960 is the MiFi units in 451 and 452, which is our 2 ambulances. And then we kept rescue vehicle maintenance the same. It's been working. Fortunately, we did hit on a discussion, and I'm going to make it public again. We bought 451 in 22 with the purpose of using it for 2 years and then remounting it, which is buying a chassis and have the box remounted. That was before everything went crazy, and it's now 25. We're still using the truck. It's older. Ambulances typically, the recommended rotation is 8 years. We're a small town, so I use the 10-year. We're on a list. We've been on a list for a year for the remount to order the chassis, and we're still on the waiting list, and it's been a year. So we have $108,000 in the reserve account for that. It's probably going to cost us anywhere from 200 to 250,000 to either purchase or remount, because I don't think they're going to honor the price that they gave us a year and a half ago, even though it's not our fault.
Right.
So it may be in the town's best interest to find a unit that's already been gone through and then do the remount rotation on the next one 8 to 10 years after that. But we are halfway there on the funding. This budget, because of the increase of the wages, we didn't ask for an appropriation. I'm sure the select board will discuss that, whether to put some money towards that project, because that's got to happen soon. But it is what it is. Having 2 ambulances, some people are like, why do we need 2 ambulances? Well, if one ambulance goes down, we get nothing. We have contracts we have to honor. And there's no ambulances to borrow. We used to call Pace and be like, hey, ours is in the shop. Can we borrow one of your spare units? They'd let us use it, or vice versa. That doesn't exist anymore. Pace is still waiting for ambulances. So. All right. It's funny, we go from fire rescue and jump into animal welfare. Brandon was here the other day. I think he did a really good job kind of covering what he did. If you haven't met Brandon, Brandon's very data analytics focused, and his reports are literally awesome. He's got a heat map. You can see where it's getting the most calls. You can see how many miles he's traveled. You can see how many hours he's worked. He's averaging out. He takes the stipend and averages out how much he made that month for the town of Buckfield. And some months it's been $7 an hour because he gets a stipend. So he's proposed a $500 per month stipend based off of our data. He does provide animal control services for multiple towns. So some of the items on here are shared with other towns. This is just what share. FICA, Medicare, mileage, obviously that's all part of that. We do pay him mileage when he responds to those calls. That includes driving to the animal shelter, driving to Augusta if he needs to, going to court if he has to. And that's based off of real mileage, not some hypothetical number that's out there. Any of the equipment that's here, this is Buckfield's share divvied up amongst all the statistics, right? So West Paris has a share. He has his idea of what he needs for material, and he splits that amongst the towns based off their call volume and their demand. So that's why some of those numbers are kind of random, but that's how it comes out.
I remember when I was first reading this, I was like, these are really specific.
Yeah, that's why they're really random numbers, like $53, $46, because it's one part of 4 towns or 5 towns,
Right.
and then add it all together. Which is a benefit that he does service other towns, because if we just had an animal control officer that just covered Buckfield, he needed the same stuff, but Buckfield would pay the full cost. The contracted fees, that's our shelter fees and everything we pay to responsible pet care, which we're fortunate to have a contract with them because they're not taking on new towns. And Sumner has to go to Harvest Hills, which is out forever. So think about that at 70 cents a mile every time you had to drop off a cat or a dog. So we're very fortunate there. And they did not increase their rates this year, which was good considering all things considered. So all in, animal welfare went up a little bit. He's a very responsive animal control officer. So one of the benefits to that, and I'm not saying it's not a benefit if you're on the receiving end of it, but after the education portion, if somebody's still, their animals are still repetitively doing the same thing, he is issuing citations. And when he issues those citations and they go to court, some of that money comes back to the town. So that helps to offset animal welfare costs. Utilities, streetlights, we converted to LEDs a year or two ago, which reduced the cost of them. This is actually, last year's number is actually lower than what it was years prior, but it's worked out great. The lights look good. And we lease them, so the good news is if they ever change a pole, we don't have to pay to move them, and if the lights up, we call them. So $5,500 a year is what it costs to use all those street lights, as well as I think we have one at the transfer station. Maybe, I can't remember, but it's considered public safety because if you've ever driven through the town and the power's out, it's actually.
Yeah.
Hydrants, I have no control over that. That's what the BBC charges us for water, and that's what the state says we have to pay the BBC. It's based off a percentage. I think it's 30% of their operating costs. So $62,000 a year to have hydrants in the village area is what we pay. Emergency management, last year Vivian Wattis was the emergency management director. She'd come up with a budget for emergency management. She later resigned. I took the role on. I work in the office. I already have a mileage line. I already have equipment. As far as postage, paper, all that other stuff. All I left in there was the EMA director line. The $930 on the FICA line is incorrect. It should be $93. I will fix that on the next version. I just put the decimal in the wrong spot. And then Medicare, that's just the FICA and Medicare portion of that stipend. So all in, the emergency management line obviously is considerably lower than last year.
Okay.
And then the public safety facility, those are everything that was pulled out of fire and rescue is now here. The line for building is an increase, but with that building is now 10 years old. There's certain things that it needs maintenance. Sheetrock in the bay, it's starting to crack. It needs to be mudded and painted. Flooring tiles that they put on were sticky tiles, and the building since shifted and settled, and tiles are popping up, creating trip hazards, and it's stuff that's going to happen in Maine with the building as it ages. My recommendation, and we haven't got quotes or anything, but I would recommend, and the rescue chief and fire chief are on the same boat, scraping up all those tiles, buffing the floors, and doing similar to what Walmart did. Just it's easier to take care of. It's easier maintenance. It is a little slippery, so you're gonna want some more runners, but it'd be basically maintenance free as far as other than buffing them and passing them or whatever. It'd be a lot better than that. And as the ground shifts, that epoxy would shift with it, and we would have all the cracks that we do right now. So that's part of this. Depending on what it would cost, I anticipate it's going to cost more than that. But there's certain things that need to be done. Some siding needs to be fixed. There's a couple windows, one of them cracked, that needs to be replaced. And then one of the windows in the building has never been right. We have one of those like insulated curtains in front of it, and on a cold day you can watch the whole curtain move and the windows blow. So that window needs to come out and be replaced. Because it's like this building, we're just blowing heat out the window. So all in on public safety, you can see there's a considerable increase there. Most of it driven by wages. What it's gonna, wages, and then obviously cost of materials and all that stuff. This obviously isn't the full amount of what we tax out, because we're gonna deduct whatever is accepted as revenue, which we'll go over later. But it is a big cost, but in my mind, it's an essential they're essential services. We have to have an animal control officer.
Yes, we do.
The fire department, we need a fire department. The rescue department, we've already hit on that. And the facility, well, we own it. We can take care of it. And so that's where we're at with that. Parks and Recreation. So this is the rec department, rec committee, whatever you want to call it. As far as youth sports, we offer t-ball, baseball, softball, basketball, and soccer. It's completely run by volunteers, including myself, because I consider the time that I do that not working time. That's me volunteering. So there's no wage lines here. It's all just strictly materials. This is just like any other department. We're gonna back up the revenues before the assessment. So, if it's accepted, so that you're not actually taxing the full amount out. But this year I broke it down a little bit more transparent. I kind of wanted to see where your stuff was. Last year it was all general. So if I bought balls, it went to general. If I bought athletic equipment, it went to general, you really can't tell, this kind of helps me. So $2,500 is primarily, we usually just get medals for the kids, or make certificates or whatever. And then rakes, shovels, field string, we use a lot of field string when we line fields and it always gets tangled. So we end up having to buy more of it, but that's where that line comes from. Uniform and safety, that's the uniforms that we buy. It is considerable cost, but we recoup all that money on registration fees. So even though it's here, because we have the budget for it, it gets wiped out when we accept the revenue. We've gone from t-shirts to really nice uniforms that the kids are proud of. The parents want to buy them. Like it's been a good transition for rec. So it's roughly 100 uniforms per sport. So the t-ball, baseball, softball is 100, and then there's 100 for basketball, and there's 100 for so. That's where that line is. Athletic equipment, that's, as catcher's gear wears out, we replace it every few years. We don't do what we did when we were kids. We don't have bats and helmets for everybody. Most kids have their own. We do have one or two for the kids that can't afford it. And we always have people, we always take stuff. If people have grown out of stuff and they want to drop it off with us, we'll take it and use it and we'll get another life. But baseballs, softballs, we have to buy every year. You use a brand new ball for every game. And they wear out over time. Soccer balls, we'll try to do 12 a year, roughly, and then rotate the 12 oldest. And then basketballs, that's like gold. I don't know why they're so expensive. But a decent basketball that we use for rec, which we do house over at the school, is $23 to $30 an hour, a ball. So we typically get one game ball per team or per age level each year, which they use for the full season, and then that becomes a practice ball. So we usually order 5 to 10, depending on the need or if we've lost balls. Tees, cones, soccer goals. We had a soccer goal damage last year. We had to replace that. It was a couple $100. Just the portable ones. The soccer goals on the big field were donated by the high school. You got those for free, so that was awesome. And then fundraisers. Last year we raised $1,500. This is all volunteer dependent. If we don't have a ton of volunteers that are helping us raise funds, I don't think we need to appropriate as much money. This basically is just the starter money as far as annual concessions. We'll buy chips and sodas and stuff, and then we'll sell it, and the money will come back as a revenue for the town. So usually what we ask for is to put it into the Parks and Rec reserve account so that if there's a scoreboard or something we want to buy, or you know what I mean?
Yes.
We can put a share to it and then find donors to pay for the rest. Dues and membership. So our baseball teams and our softball teams are affiliated with Babe Ruth. Baseball's Cal Ripken, softball's Babe Ruth softball. Those have fees that are also correlate to additional insurance for the town as well as the kids. And that's those costs annually. Youth swim lessons are housed by Hartford. It's always been $500. It's usually right around $500. That's what we do.
So since it's
Umpire playoff fees, that went up a lot because I've accurately budgeted for that. And I wanted to this time to make sure that it's correctly correlated in there. So if I went over on umpire fees, usually I just take it out of general. And just trying to get it all squared away now. So currently, as of last year, baseball umpires are $75 a game. We could have 20 home games. So that adds up. And then softball, $60 a game. I anticipate these costs are going to go up with everything else. Soccer referees, I pay $40 per game. Some games I have 2 refs because that's a big field. And then basketball, $25 a game. Technology line for rec, because we don't have any paid employees, we have a website that's tied to our town website. It handles all of our registrations. It compiles all of our member data. We can communicate with anybody that's ever signed up with rec, processes the payments, and then it deposits the money into the town. All I have to do is receipt for it on a monthly basis.
nice.
That $800 last year, and actually I didn't have it for the full year last year, I don't think, or maybe I did. That $800 translated to over $12,000 in registration fees. So obviously it's a good worth it. And then porta potties went up a little bit because as we have more kids involved, we have more locations we have to have them at. And like I said at the last meeting, I can't have a bunch of 7-year-olds playing baseball over at Bessie Field, being in the woods. So
Wow.
It's not like. The neighbor's pretty close over there.
My neighbor's house is quite.
And girl, yeah, exactly.
It's a difference.
That's why that line went up. The rec field portion of that, last year, we had purchased, not rec, but the town in general purchased a new zero turn, which benefits cemetery, rec, municipal center. We split that cost, so I backed out that cost. Obviously, we're not buying another zero turn this year. The field line, which we have to put down before every game, field paint for soccer and softball and baseball, as well as treatments. That's basically just, high level vinegar and soap and stuff that we just treat the weeds on the infield with. So that line went down, but all in, rec went up about $3,000. If you look, when we get to the revenues, you'll notice revenues went up $3,000. So this budget's essentially flat. It's more laid out and easier to read. Organizations and events, so that every year we buy new flags for the graves or the veteran graves. Can't use them year after year. They look like crap after one summer. So we typically buy 4 cases of those. They run about $865 out of the last year. That's what that $900
Do
is.
you use volunteers to this?
The school does it for us. They have the kids do it.
Beautiful.
Yep, and then the kids will pick them up at the end of the year. They have 2 trips out there. Well, actually, multiple locations because they hit all the cemeteries.
Okay.
So yeah, that saves the town money too on that aspect of it. The community events committee, we have a community events committee. They put on the trunk or treat. They do community day now that we're doing that again. They've talked about other events. They have held a Thanksgiving, community Thanksgiving before the last year, not this past year, but the year before. This is just money to fund stuff that they may need for those. For Labor Day, they actually do have a savings account that has roughly $6,000 in it. And that money can be used. And then when they do Community Day, any revenues they bring in go back into that account.
So Labor Day and Community Day, they're the same, right?
Yeah. We just renamed the committee to community events because they wanted to do other things besides just Labor Day. So that's what that is. We got the question at the meeting the other day, what is this $3,250 for social services? Every year, every town gets requests from different services like Seniors Plus, Life Flight of Maine, RCAM, the services that help community members with various different things, sexual assault victims. They usually send us a report of what they did for the town in that past year. And then the committee will meet and look at the requests and then delegate out of that 3,250 because that's an amount of money. Usually it's only a few hundred, a couple $100 here, $100 there, or whatever, but that's where that money comes from. That line has not changed since I've been here. It's always been 3,250. And we've always expended all of it to a lot of great services that provide way more than what we're contributing to them back into. So that's what that is. General assistance, I think everybody knows what general assistance is. That's one line that we can go over if we have to. So we've always used $2,000. I've never gone over the $2,000. It's GA is one of those things, it's a last resort thing and it's really hard to qualify for it. But if people do qualify for it, that's the line that will come out of. And then 70%, I think, is what the state reimburses the town for. So on the revenue side, you'll see a $1,400 line. So really this line is roughly $800. And if we don't use this year's, it'll lapse and it'll be part of fund balance. So it's kind of the church. Is that you want to talk about the church? I heard last time.
Yeah.
Is this
So
the church of?
Church up on the hill on High Street, yeah. So a lot of this is just maintenance costs, keeping the electricity going. We don't have any like plumbing up there, so we don't have to pay for that. We do have a committee now that can form a quorum officially, so this next year we'll be looking into projects that have been identified as a priority. We have a window that needs to be replaced or at least sealed so that it will stop leaking and it could use definitely another coat of paint. As well as just discussions about what we'd like to do within our future, but this is just for the maintenance.
And that is owned by the town.
It is owned by the town right now.
Used at all or no?
Mostly for storage. It's kind of a weird space. It's up on that little hill. There's not a ton of parking. There has been a wedding, but they just parked up and down High Street, which can get a little crowded.
They
Yeah.
use it for those.
Yeah. And then there's no bathroom, there's no Wi-Fi, so it's kind of a weird space.
Don't want to get rid of it, but don't really know what to do.
It's a lot of historical value to the town, you know, a lot of people grew up like going to events over there. And also the history that's there. It was first built as like for multiple congregations. They all share the space. Came together as a community there. It's on the town seal. So there's a lot of like definitely strong historical and like symbolic value there, but definitely worth discussing what we want to see from it in the future.
To sum it up, we're not doing it any justice right now. Paying for the electricity and doing $5,000 worth of paint or plaster work.
At some point, the building is going to fall in on itself.
And that's what we want to avoid.
So we either need to, as a town, decide that we will invest the hundreds of thousands of dollars that need to be invested and then continue to maintain it at the level that the building needs to be maintained. Or we look at options. In my happy fantasy, there's a group out there that wants to form a nonprofit and would like to take some of that ownership in the church. And because there are people who would spend money on that cause, and perhaps doing it that way, they could seek funds and that, but
It's a tough property because it sits on a hill with no parking and there's no water,
Yeah,
limited electricity.
yeah. How many acres is it on?
One. Actually, I don't even know.
Don't even
I think it's half an acre.
One, so, yeah, really.
so, but if we don't do something soon, it
The end
will
result's
become
gonna
to
be-
such a level of disrepair that
The steeple's just gonna.
just
Yeah,
everyone,
good.
so this is something that we need to tackle sooner rather than later. So any thoughts or ideas that you folks have on this, whether today or at a later time, or other people in town, please,
It's one of those for grassroots, just start talking about it.
we have to,
Sometimes.
we have to, it's beautiful.
Azalea's been doing great. She made up posters for community day and like. You know what I mean? She's been communicating, we've been communicating. It's just like, we just need the right people that want.
You just never know who you're talking with.
Right.
That is that right person. So the more people you just throw it into a conversation.
Azalea could not reach out anymore or be more
Yeah,
receptive as the liaison there, but if folks, something, we have to.
yeah,
Put a soapbox up there, have you stand on it and be like, save the church.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready to do some paint scraping this summer,
Or the
so.
lighter that
Yeah.
you can get just talking about it.
And hopefully if we can take some action this summer, like people will notice that the church is being, you know, worked on and people are there, maybe even while we're there working on it, inviting them in to see the space. A lot of people have never even been inside before. Yeah, so. Definitely an opportunity, but yeah, tough subject, because we obviously don't want to think about this town icon falling into disrepair or, you know, the potential of having to sell it off just so it can be really cared for by
Right.
people who can afford to care about it. But yeah, it's a lot to burden the taxpayer.
Right. And I mean, you have the Norlands, and when I was a kid, watching what they did with the Norlands of bringing that into such a huge thing. But it took one woman with the vision and the drive to really push it, and it was amazing to watch that. But it takes one person with that.
Yeah.
And you know, having moved now into Buckfield, it's like, what's the deal with this church?
Mhm.
You know, so hopefully somewhere out there is a person who has that passion for it.
Yeah.
I don't want it to look like a haunted house.
Yeah.
That do look like skeletons hanging. Person has. Let's not do that.
So as far as the church, I kept it the same. The summer, obviously we have $5,000 in this year's budget. I had talked about, it would be nice to get the building painted. It's been progressive, you know, just to protect the outside. And then there's some plaster work on the inside and then that window. unfortunately, it's, what do you call those types of, it's like an artsy window. And
It's like a
long.
cathedral, yeah, it's like a really specific, it's not your.
I can't call Anderson.
Right, yeah, yeah.
So that broke last year. All I could really do was get Public Works to put some cardboard and some plastic up to just stop the water from getting into the building. So things like that, I don't even know where to begin to find somebody that can potentially repair that window. So if you know anybody, let me know. Yeah.
Some
kind of frame
historical
An old wooden
society.
frame window or a
Yeah,
metal
just
frame?
wooden frame, yeah, and then it, has the taper at the top, square bottom, but.
If it would have been taken care of prior to, it probably could have just been reglazed and the frame repainted, but the top peak point of it has, somebody brought that to me all broken up. So at this point, it's
So you can
no top.
You don't.
take it apart,
And
repair any pieces or replace, yeah.
The library, 2.5%, like we discussed in the other departments. You'll notice the library assistant line went down. It didn't, that's the library assistant's portion. We used to have the library, what we called subs in that line. So it had all that pay, but we've now separated those out and put those under 501, 137 library aids. So that's the difference there. Obviously, there's an increase there. Part of that increase is the 2.5. No, it's not part of the 2.5. It's part of me recommending that we pay those aides $15.50 an hour for the 8 hours a week that they work, as opposed to minimum wage, which is only what,
It's not that much.
95 cents more.
It's 14.65.
I really don't think. Rescue pays the driver's minimum wage, and that's to entice them to or license up.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I don't really see paying anybody minimum wage, but that's my opinion. Like a Medicare, that all correlates with the increases there. We did put a mileage line in there. Kathy does do library training occasionally. She also goes to there was a conference she went to last year from the Maine State Library. That's to reimburse her for that, because again, we don't have town vehicles that we can drive, and it's probably a good thing. That would have been more cost. So that's why that line's there. The other employee benefit, again, that's the paid family medical leave portion.
So we have Kathy is there. Is Hannah still working there?
Yeah, Hannah works roughly 12 hours a week. Kathy works roughly 20 hours a week. And then while they're doing their program story time or whatever, when Kathy's engaged in that, we'll have what we used to call library subs. We call them library aides. They come in and work the counter and answer the phones and do all that stuff. So they're only there roughly, I say 8 hours a week. Some weeks it could be 6 and it could be 8. It's just Kathy trying to be clear on her budget and what she's got going on with me helps me understand what goes in. So, where was I? Okay. So paid family medical leave, general books, it's the same. Basically anything that we have in the book line is coming back as a trust fund designation. As long as the town's smart enough to accept the revenues. There are people that vote no, I don't know why. So the income that we earn on those trust funds goes for the purpose of buying books. We accept that as a revenue and that'll make that fund go away. Postage, that's the interlibrary loan stuff. We have to mail those books back.
Oh, right.
So. Phone fax, internet's all the same. I did have that internet line added there because me being me thought, oh wait, I guess the internet at the library is free for the first 2 years until the state library or the state got back to me and said, hey, you didn't pay your internet last year. So that's what we pay the state for the internet at the library for the full year. Which $200 a year is pretty good.
Quite, yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind paying that.
Yeah.
Heating fuel, I increased slightly. And that's primarily driven by the fact that this winter was a little colder than last winter. So that's why we went there. And then the building, I kept at 2,000. Azalea did ask the question if that's enough, I think, at the last meeting. We've got small little projects, the flooring inside the addition. Excuse me. In the addition is the adhesive tiles are coming up. So we're talking about replacing the flooring in there. This year's budget, we're doing the storm door out front when we had the building painted and they were pressure washing it. Not having a storm door, there was actually water squirting into the library. So I think a storm door is important. It's been talked about for years, and for the cost, I don't see why it hasn't been done yet, but we're gonna get that taken care of. And then there was discussion about a generator. It was asked, you talking about like a on-demand generator? No, we're talking, just a generator that can run the library in a prolonged power outage, because during the last one, those 4 days, we were concerned with the pipes were gonna burst. So we did hook up my generator to the library to keep the furnace running, but it would be nice to have that. And there may be grants out there too, but I just listed that to keep it as a record of the things that we're thinking about. And that's what the library committee has suggested. So all in the community budget was a $6,000 increase. Most of that's in the library aspect of it, but the library revenues increased slightly, so that's where most of it's coming. Hey, a good one, debt service. I have no new debt service requests. I'm not asking for anything this year. And you'll notice this doesn't have a number for the 2009 International, and this doesn't have a number for the 2012 Peterbilt. That's because we had paid those off. So they have to show up on my report so you can see last year's budget, but the good news is all in this year, we're down from 167,735 to 136,340. So there's a little bit of savings on that lost revenue from that. We'll be having a different discussion next year. Public Works Complex. So obviously this is the highway garage. Public Works is broken into several sections. So we'll start with the complex. Heating fuel right here. We do have a waste oil furnace, but we don't generate enough waste oil to heat that place all the
We
time.
take the stuff from the transfer station and right there.
Which I asked the public to be very cognizant of what they're dumping in there, because,
Yeah,
what is it all that?
I talked to the guy when my float stuck on my generator.
Mhm.
So it filled my whole crankcase with gas. So when I drained the oil,
It's,
it was
yeah,
mixed with gas.
that's hazardous work.
Then, the first gas oil, I put in one for a little bit, then I drained that out. Get the rest of the gas that went into the crankcase out. So, and he said,
You just can't take it.
I said, yeah, I got a gas system, this, you want it? No, I can't take it. Although it probably would burn better in your waste oils.
So that's actually a good question, because I do sign Buckfield and somewhere up for the household hazardous waste days for the depot. And we do have a budget for that. So every household can get rid of 2 units, and I think it's like 5 gallons a unit, or they have a poundage based off that. That's where that stuff would need to go. Sometimes there's one, because I participate in the regional program, or we participate in the regional program. Sometimes I do them in Norway. So I try to put those calendars out on Facebook, through the email, post it here, so that you know the dates. That usually happens throughout the summer. So I've already re-enrolled for next year. So things like that you might have, insecticide or pesticides, stuff like that. What do you do with this? Rather than throw it in the bottom of the bag and throw it in the compactor.
This one just,
I'm not saying anybody is. I'm just saying we have a solution for this.
You have to have clear trash bags.
Yeah.
So they can see what's in it.
Yeah,
And
right,
then you have to have something.
Yeah, for somebody.
Technically, we're not supposed to use black trash bags at the transfer station either. But again, monitoring is, it's a trash bag. I'm not gonna tell somebody they have to take the trash home and put it in another bag. Or not, but you match a bill telling somebody you gotta take that home and put it in a different bag.
No.
So all in, as far as that, there was just a slight increase on heating fuel. Again, colder winter. We do use that. The heating fuel also heats the hot water in that building too. And when they built that, it's got a radiant floor. So it burns. When we do have to use oil, it burns a little bit.
I was gonna say, yeah, we love the radiant heat. Sport.
It's nice when you land underneath the truck doing work.
It's also a jump zone, so it makes it really nice. If it gets too hot, it's like out.
Yeah.
Public Works, this is like the operational account, so this is the wages and the liabilities that we have, like social security and stuff. 2.5%. I went and readjusted salaries halfway through this year, trying to hire somebody. Obviously, if I'm gonna hire somebody at a high wage, I can't not fix the salaries of the people that are working for me already. So you'll notice that if you look at like the road assistant, that's obviously not 2.5%. That's because I had already, because I didn't have that. I took those funds, if those wages from what we hadn't expended there, so I need to correct that there. But overall, it's a 2.5% increase for the drivers, the road commissioner. I mean, not the road commissioner, I'm the road commissioner. I gotta fix that, so it's a foreman. And that's all I'm asking for there, because I feel like we've gotten their salaries for that 50th percentile range. Road commissioner, that's the stipend I get for being the road commissioner. It's like $40 a week or $48 a week. That's included in there. And then overtime, I always budget for overtime. I adjusted this based off the proposed increase. Obviously storms. I mean, 2 weeks ago, our guys were working 74 hours a week. So I actually separate that payroll. So if they work overtime, it comes out of a different account, so I can actually track how much we spent on overtime. I didn't start that till last year, but it's great now that I can see it. HRA fee, that's the quarterly fee for the HRA, which is $12 per person. That's enrolled in the program. Retirement. 3 guys currently, so I'm actually not budgeting for if we hire somebody and they take it, so there will be a shortfall there, but where I haven't been very successful in finding somebody, I didn't want to just throw $6,000 in there, $5,000 in there. Health insurance, that's the adjustment. Again, I've got 3 employees with health insurance in public works. That's based off the recommendation. I can adjust that if that gets changed, but that's what it would cost if we went under the new plan. And that's just individual. In lieu of, I did not budget for anything. The last person that took the in lieu of that we talked about, $100 a month that they didn't take the health insurance was our former public works foreman. Nobody has it right now. I didn't budget for it. I figured if somebody comes in and refuses the health insurance and then takes that, it's probably easier to find $1,200. You know, if we don't have an employee on week 1, we've already got that from the wages we didn't pay. It's a good point. FICA, Medicare, it's all the same. I mean, it's adjusted for obviously the increases. Oils and lube, I increased by 1,000. You know, that's any grease, oil, transmission fluid, any of that stuff that we need, all of which has gone up in price. Gas and diesel, I left the same. All the gas and diesel gets billed through Public Works, and then I bill it up quarterly to the individual departments. They keep receipts. We purchased a card system, you know, so we'd have pins and it would print out a report. Well, the company that created it went out of business. So we're back to doing receipts, which is manual entry into a spreadsheet. There's really nothing I can do about it this time. Nobody could foresee that. But it was 2 years after the fact, and it's just is what it is. So everything gets billed through Public Works. Quarterly, I bill it. I do a journal to transfer out of fire rescue, whoever used the fuel. So those do get it. That's why each department has their own share. So 35,000 isn't the full amount it would cost the entire town. It's just what Public Works share is. Uniforms. A few years ago, we used to have a uniform service. It was extremely pricey.
Like cleaning?
Oh yeah, they pick them up, clean them, you know. So we went to an allowance, basically, you know, we'll purchase them X amount of shirts a year and then boots. And then they go home and they wash their own stuff. Good for the town, sucks for their laundry, their washing machine. But they seem to like it, you know what I mean? It's the uniform company, the uniforms that they provided, they weren't very comfortable anyway. So the guys they were wasting money and they're buying their own pants and they're doing their, you know, it's just, I didn't see the value in it. Tools and miscellaneous is the same. That's mostly like hydraulic fittings that we do have an inventory of hydraulic fittings in various parts. So things that break frequently, we have a spare because it's in the middle of a storm. We can't wait for traction to open up and go pick up a hydraulic fitting. Lonely. So we do have a small inventory of that stuff. So anytime we replenish that, it goes back into there. That's what that line pays for. Public Works trucks, this is what we discussed earlier. You can see it's a decrease, but technically it's an increase because we're not buying another body, but that's the money we're going to put into those trucks. I have one that's sitting outside waiting for spring. We're going to send off. It's got some transmission issues and I want to send it out. I don't want the guys messing with it because it's pretty complex. Our guys do save us a lot of money. They do a lot of maintenance in-house, oil changes, services, stuff like that. On the spot repairs, welding, So we do save a ton of money, but sometimes there is stuff that we just have to send out. With that said, we don't have the scanning tools or the scanning capabilities to check codes that we need to. So for those instances, it gets sent out. Unless someday we find a way to purchase a scan tool.
Yeah, but then they'll change them.
So we pay for the updates. Anyway,
Cynical on that.
you know what I used to do in another life? I sold parts and I sold that equipment. So miscellaneous, I removed, that was, I remember, yeah, it was just, it was there and I didn't like a miscellaneous line, so it's gone. So all in for that operations account, up from 467 to 496, that's wage increases in material, goods and services, and then obviously. Anything else we discussed? Summer roads, so this is all roads, so this is gravel, this is materials, this is riprap, whatever we need to work on the roads. Bridging guardrails, last year it was 19.5. Because we had a quote for 16,000 to replace a section of guardrail up on Darnett Road. That had been hit by a car numerous times, which just got hit again. So I'm glad we didn't replace it yet. As well as put guardrails on the Drew Bridge project that we finished over on Bear Pond Road.
We don't charge against drivers' insurances to fix or repair.
Trying to figure out who that person is, and then, yeah, it's
an accident where the vehicle takes off.
Yeah, they don't like to stick around.
But if you didn't have the guardrail, trust me, they'd find us. And
My grandparents, I grew up in the house around that corner and I remember before there was a guardrail,
the people going over that.
cars going
Yeah.
over the edge.
That's a dangerous embankment.
It's really.
So it's a good thing there's a guardrail there, but
We already have chevron alignments there, to like let people know that
Oh, yeah.
it's coming and everything, but it's just, it does come up quick, it's downhill, it's.
you come over that knoll and then the road just does this.
Right.
it's worth having a
Yeah.
safe.
Yeah.
Aftermath.
So we reduced that to 5,000 because I don't have any other guardrails that I anticipate I need to replace. And we don't typically, most of the bridges in town are, if they're over a certain distance, the state takes care of them. There's a couple bridges that are on the monitoring from DOT that there's things that we should do, but they're like on discontinued roads and stuff that, we've posted and said nothing over 10,000 residents, then fix them. It may become an issue in the future that we have to put money into them. It's just,
It's part of this increase or the culvert, is that with the one on 117 that's being,
no, we don't raise any money for that. That's all.
that's all state.
Yeah. No, but believe it or not, we spend a lot of money on culverts. So the way the town, and this isn't all straight out of taxpayers' dollar, but out of taxpayers' pocket. But anybody that comes in and builds a house has to get a driveway permit, and the town has to install the first culvert, or has to install the culvert, because as soon as there's a culvert there, it's our responsibility. So we're taking, we have a policy in town. We're taking ownership that we installed it right, so if it fails, we own it. So we install it, we charge the cost of the culvert to the owner for the initial one. If anything goes wrong, the town's on the hook to replace it in the future. And we've also had an ongoing maintenance plan of replacing older metal culverts that are rotting out, which has helped save complete washouts of roads all over town. So we're staying with that plan. The problem is plastic's gone up. And yeah, the two projects, fortunately, we got FEMA money for on Darnett Road and Purpose Road, which one of them we upsized the culvert, but those two culverts only $15,000 just for those two projects. Most of the culverts we buy are 18-inch or 24-inch. But again, we're getting that money back from FEMA someday. Culverts, already got that. Sidewalks, that's basically if we have to rent a piece of equipment to sweep the sidewalks, those haven't been swept in a long time, or if we have to patch anything on the sidewalk because we installed or we had the state install sidewalks that were liable for us, so we have to have something there. All roads, talking to Preston, the amount of, washouts, shoulder work, ditching stuff that we need, materials. we did increase that by $15,000. There's a lot of projects that we need to do, like the shoulders up on Bear Pond Road. We need to flatten out some of these shoulders. And honestly, the Bear Pond project, probably want to look to contract somebody else to do it, because they'll get it done a lot quicker. And do it, you know what I mean?
It's a long,
It's a long stretch for 3 guys and a couple flaggers, or 2 guys and a couple flaggers. So that's why that rows there. And then paving, they kept it the same. Last year's project that still hasn't happened, that's supposed to happen in the spring. That came in at roughly 469,000. The Bear Pond and the East Buckfield was roughly the same. Actually, I think it might be a little bit more. So if we're gonna continue to fix roads and stay on track with the plan, maintaining that level of funding is crucial. The only other option, which we talked about last year, was bonding, and nobody liked that idea. So borrowing money today that people have to pay off 30 years from now isn't a favorable option from what we gathered for input from people. So if we at least stay with this, we're getting something done. The plan is through roads, finish the through roads. So currently that stretch of Paris Hill that's a mess right now is going to be done in the spring. This next fiscal year is finish the top of Paris Hill that goes and connects to Paris, where they already just paved. So that whole stretch all the way down into North Buckfield will be done. And then Brock School Road, there's a section of Brock School Road, and we'll proceed to start doing those, because we've already finished East Buckfield and Bear Pond, which is a through road. Paris Hill is a through road. Sodom Road.
you're doing all the way from Paris, all the way, I mean, there
No,
are
so
parts that are dug up.
no,
Way down.
so the stretch from top of Buck Hill to just before, actually North Whitman School Road is what we're doing
Okay,
this year, or technically last year. And then next year's plan is from there to the Paris line, which is a little shy of a mile. It might be less than a mile, because that part is really, really bad.
yes,
But then that section will be done. This whole stretch will be done. They just paved, or no, it won't go up to North Whitman. You're right. Okay, I got screwed up. The bottom of, where Devin Trenoweth used to live? Oh, no, probably not. We paved the stretch of it 3 years ago. The horse barn there that sits at the bottom of the hill. So we did that stretch from there to just past like where D&D excavation is. So this coming budget would pay from there to the Paris line.
oh,
This last year's budget will pay from the top of Buck Hill to where we started paving that time. So at this point, once we finish that whole stretch will have been done. So Paris Hill will be done. The East Buckfield, the Bear Pond obviously is done. Sodom Road's a gravel road. We put a ton of gravel into it last year. We're always doing ongoing maintenance there. There's the paved section of Sodom Road that it's not the worst stretch of road. It will need to be paved at some point, or we decide if we reclaim it up to a certain point before 117, because I wouldn't recommend making that gravel all the way to the edge of the street. That's a bad corner. You need pavement to get traction, but I don't know if it makes sense to continue with that. That may be an unfavorable opinion, but if not, I think there's close to a mile or two that would need to be repaved on Sodom Road as well. But I get most of my planning and stuff from the road committee, which is 5 members, so they give me their opinion. A lot of them have experience on dealing with roads and construction, so this isn't just Cameron making up, I want to pave this road. That's coming from a group of people that are making those decisions or making those recommendations.
The road committee meetings are open to the public.
Yeah, and they're posted.
One can go, because our road needs a
smidgen of here or there.
so anyone can go and talk with them.
Yeah,
Better
they
understand.
typically only meet 1 or 2 times a year, when we're discussing stuff like this.
Yeah.
I'd like to get it maybe on a quarterly basis, but. Yeah, I mean, I'm basically just going with the plan that was in effect before I got here, so, and it's what worked out so far, with the exception of last year not getting the paving company not being able to come when they said they were gonna come, and us having to deal with all that we did. Future RFPs will have a clause in it that says they have till a certain date to do it. If they don't, they're paying to fill anything that we may have dug up, because the plows and just doing a number on that road, it's doing a number on our equipment, but paying $3,000 for every one of those culvert cuts to pave it, just to tear it up, didn't make any sense either. So. Winter roads, that's our line that pays for sand, salt, calcium, sidewalk maintenance. I gotta rent a piece of equipment. We discussed the sidewalk machine that we had purchased for $6,000 a couple years ago, which is what we paid to rent a piece of equipment years prior. That disappeared and it was no longer available. So we thought, hey, if we buy this and get one season, we've got our money's worth. It lasted one storm, the motor blew. So we replaced the motor and then found other issues with it. We're still trying to decide on whether or not it's worth putting money into and using, or if we rent a piece of equipment, or in subsequent years, we buy a piece of equipment that's multi-use and we can use for sidewalks and construction and whatever else. But that's what I set aside for renting something to clear the sidewalks. Cemeteries, I mean, that's maintenance to the cemeteries. Last year we purchased zero turn cemeteries, obviously paid for some of that. I put that line up to $11,000 primarily. There's fencing and stuff that needs to be replaced, painted, fixed, signage. We've talked about the signage, the Damon Cemetery, adding material to the roadways, loam for low areas that need to be filled in because it tears apart our zero turns and our blades.
Yeah.
So that's what that money's for.
When
we-
the materials to town take care of.
Oh, I don't know, 18 of them.
18.
I don't know if that's the exact number, don't quote me on it, there's. No, there's a ton of small family cemeteries that the town takes care of, and they have veterans in them too, so we have, every year, most of them, we just go out and make sure they're clear, there's no brush. Make sure everything looks good, the ones we really mow are the ones in East Buckfield. And then obviously Damon Cemetery, which some weeks can be a 40-hour-a-week job, just keeping that.
Yeah, it's big.
We did hit on at the last meeting with the help, or not the help, the staffing we have at Public Works. When we do road work, we need 2 flaggers, or at least 1 flagger, depending on the size of the site. So my mowing guys become my flagger guys, and then I've got a guy in a piece of equipment and a guy in a truck. So that's why when you drive by the cemetery, you see the grass hasn't been cut or whatever. It's a staffing thing, because it's either fix the roads or mow the grass, and sometimes we have to prioritize based off what we have to do. So having that 1 extra operator helps out a lot because I can still keep 1 guy out there mowing nonstop. But yeah, so that budget there stayed the same. I didn't back out the cost of the zero turn. I added that to the cost of what we'll do to fix it. I think at Damon Cemetery, there needs to be some more blockage so that in the winter months when the cemetery is closed, I'm not having to constantly hound people not to drive over people's gravestones. It's disrespectful, and if we can do something to prevent it from happening, then maybe we should invest in something to do that. We close it for a reason. If there's snow on the ground, you can't see a lot of the stones.
It's crazy.
Where are we now? So that brings, so Public Works all in, that's cemeteries, that's summer roads, winter roads, operation. That brings that budget from the 1.151 million to 1.1, 192. So it's about a $40,000 increase overall. And as you recall, 15,000 of that was what we put into all roads. This is a big increase. So wage wise, we had adjusted their salary a couple of years ago, and we've been giving them cost of living increases there. So we're good on the wages there, in my opinion. I'm just asking for the 2.5%. The transfer station supervisor, that's there because obviously this is a joint venture between Sumner and Buckfield. And I don't think Buckfield should have to foot the whole bill for the guy that manages the place, which happens to be our public works director. So he gets that $2,400 a year stipend for making the phone calls to all the companies that have to come and pick stuff up. Fielding the phone calls for the complaints from the companies when we need to unclog the compactor hole and, make the water drain out and all of that stuff. And it basically comes up to 2 hours a week. And he spends more than 2 hours a week there. So that's just our way of sharing the cost between the 2 towns. Like a Medicare, that's all adjusted based off of the increase. Gas and diesel are the same. We use diesel in the backhoe and we use propane in the forklift. Other miscellaneous, that's random supplies we may need, like the strapping for the cardboard. Um, which is very pricey, by the way. Property and casualty insurance. So this is the share that I put over in solid waste. Obviously, our insurance is what covers the transfer station, but again, Sumner needs to help pay for that share as well. So that's why there's $1,800 included in this. And that was based off of my 12.5% projection. Waste and recycling. So this is where everything comes from. All the disposal, all the hauling. I moved it up to 160 last year. We're gonna go over it again this year. So I went line by line, pulled invoices, looked at tonnage, and I came up with this amount of money based off of the vendors that we use and the prices we pay. And I estimated a 2.5% increase in disposal, which seems to be on that seems to be what it is every year. We seem to be like a couple percent more. So I try to anticipate for that. And I based it off of the current tonnage prices. I tried to break it up as best I could as far as laying out the prices of what we're paying. I added $5,000 in anticipated mattress disposal fees. I think we're at 3,000 already this year. So seems like a good ballpark number. Although I don't know where all the mattresses are coming from. I think the biggest issue with the transfer station in general is in America we've made stuff disposable. Like we talked about TVs, right? You buy a flat screen TV and something happens to it, you just take it to the dump, get a new one, they're cheap enough. Well, we had North Coast come and pick up 5 totes or 4 or 5 totes of TVs and monitors and stuff. And within 2 weeks, we had 3 full again. So a lot of the stuff we have is just one and done. You know, we talked about people don't fix appliances like they used to. The appliance repair guys are like, it costs more to fix it, you might as well do a new one. So I think that's kind of where a lot of that stuff's coming from. And obviously we get, our population here has gone up a little bit. We've had new people come in. Sumner's the same way. And if you look at the census data, everybody's growing. So more families, more waste. But I also think that a key to this is there's material coming in from commercial stuff. You know, I have gotten Oxford County involved. It was a misunderstanding on this part, but you know, I saw one individual was disposing of 7 to 10 windshields on a Saturday. And then a few weekends later, there was another one. And then there was another one. And I'm like, where are all these windshields coming from? Well, he owns a windshield repair business. And I didn't think it came back in another town. So I got Oxford County involved, come to find out they did move to Buckfield and he does have a transfer station sticker. I just couldn't see it. But we don't have a policy against it. So, I felt foolish having Oxford County do the legwork, but I am trying, having the cameras there now, I can see these things and if you start to see patterns.
So how do we as a town, I see that you guys are business owners, so I see the transfer station more as a private resident thing.
Right.
How do we accommodate the companies, or how do we deal with that? Because that's an unfair, seems almost like an unfair.
So the way I look at it, and this is just my opinion, anybody can chime in. When it comes to like mainstream waste, just garbage, stuff like that, and the prices we pay, if there's a business in town like the Buckfield Mall or Tilton's or a hair salon or anything like that, and they're just disposing of that on that commercial level, they pay personal property tax, plus they pay property tax. Like I see that. But like I said, if you're demoing a house out of town, bringing that debris back to Buckfield, they're not paying that personal property tax. They're not, they're bringing considerable amount of stuff at $175 a ton into our transfer station. And that's where I see the line. I'm trying to hit on the expensive stuff, the sheetrock, the shingles, the OBW, the solid waste committee keeps asking about tires. We actually, believe it or not, probably spend about $10,000 a year to get rid of tires. That's really not that much. Main waste energy charges $12 a tire. We don't take it there. We take it to a recycling plant, and the tonnage is a lot cheaper.
So I guess
Your tire, you have a disposal fee in the purchase of your tire. Do we get money for each tire?
No, that's the disposal fee that when they keep your tire and they dispose of it. These are the people that bring their tires to us, so.
I'm pretty ignorant of how towns work, so. I guess my question is, understanding what you're saying, how do we, as a town, is that something we do at town meeting? Is that something we bring to the select board? How does somebody say, I'm seeing this and I'm not quite sure what to do about it? How do I help my town address it?
Bringing that to me helps, because then I can bring it to the solid waste committee, which the solid waste committee is like the select board of the transfer station, right? Because it's between two towns. So it's three of our selectmen and three of their selectmen, and they make policies and guidance and stuff for the transfer station. And that's what we're currently kind of like discussing and trying to wrap our heads around. The problem is right now, even if we started incorporated a charging system, like the policing aspect of it's one thing, you really have to run it on the honor system. And if we were running on the honor system, we wouldn't have to be talking about it. Right. So, if somebody needs to get rid of a refrigerator, okay, you're gonna come to the town office, you're gonna pay $20 to get your ticket and then or sticker, and then you bring your refrigerator with a sticker on the side of it. That way we're not handing money to our transfer station attendants. But now if we do that, we gotta make sure the transfer station attendants are actually like on it. And on a Saturday, it's busy, they can't track all that.
So thank you.
There is a conversation with,
Absolutely.
at $64,000 increase. And this is just Buckfield's portion, correct?
No, this is the full budget. So Sumner's gonna share over the overall cost of the transfer station is 308,000. You're gonna back 107,000 right off of it, because that's 35%. That's what they're gonna pay us.
But if I'm just looking at this line here, 160,000 up to 224,000. $64,340 increase. You could hire someone to monitor these kinds of, and in fact, if people paying, right, you pay to get rid of your refrigerator, you pay, that could very well cover the salary of somebody to just monitor these things. Perhaps those kinds of disposal maybe only happens on Saturday or revolving the Saturday and explain, so you don't have to, I think that there are.
There's options.
And discussions to be had. Let's say that somebody was going to demo an apartment building and refurbish that. You could pay for a dumpster to come, and so then you're paying for that. But also if you had a trailer, the amount of waste going into the transfer station.
It could potentially outweigh and that's what I brought up, is does the cost of what we would need to incorporate outweigh the cost of what we're already paying? So it's just a matter of figuring out what that would look like. One of the biggest challenges I have with the transfer station started staffing is, how do you find that one person that wants to police that 1 to 2 days a week? A retired person, yeah, that's obviously everybody that works there is retired to some extent. But you also want somebody who's going to come in and take it seriously and actually do it and not just. So that's a struggle, right? Most people are looking for full-time or at least part-time of 30 hours a week. And if they're only doing it for 9 hours a week, it's like you have a very limited pool of candidates that can do it.
Although we do have an older population that is probably quite retired and just want that much, so.
Yep.
It's not outside the realm of possibility, but you're right, you have to find a way to find that one or two.
Discussions to be had. If I'm tearing down a home and I could get a dumpster service and have 6 dumpsters hauled away, that now I'm paying for that to tear down my home, or I can tear down my home and trailer load by trailer load, take it to the transfer station and it will cost me nothing. But then that's a cost that everyone has to absorb. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't or that we should, but that's a discussion.
Yeah.
That I would really like to see people
And
have.
like I say, the policing issue is the big thing, because you could put in reasonable You know, I've seen towns where it's like you get 2 trucks a month or whatever, you're allowed so much as a resident of the town to utilize, but then how do you do that? You have somebody, punch your card, to say, okay, you've done your quota for the month. So it's a
Yeah.
difficult thing to,
They had spitballed the idea about like mailing the ticket out, right? When you do your tax bill, you send that out with all the tax bills. Well, then you got the guys who, or girls, who lose their ticket, and then you take their, like, well, I have no proof that you didn't use your ticket, and now you're saying I lost my ticket, I need another one, so it's.
Yeah. But
I think it's a conversation that the solid waste committee needs to seriously sit down and hash out.
yeah,
If not this year, before the next fiscal year, because the trend.
yeah, just Buckfield. It can't be just here. So there is a network that you have of all the other solid waste management.
What about other transfer stations?
Yeah, are there people out there who found a way to think outside the box?
the only way I see making the policing work is you don't allow any of those items for free.
Mhm.
And anytime you bring it, it has to either have a ticket from the town office or, but then you just have to make sure somebody's there to say,
Yeah.
where's your ticket? You don't want them collecting money at the transfer station.
Right.
Which is what they do in some towns. They actually collect money there. But then you don't know where that money's going.
These days, that's a dangerous position, but so.
Mhm.
I guess as long as the town can keep absorbing the costs, we keep it the way it is.
And this is, I mean, this is something that has come up in Buckfield in the past about charging for things, and it's usually met with significant resistance because people in towns have gotten used to, you've heard it before. We got one of the best dumps in the state. Like we don't have to pay to get rid of anything, So having get that message out that yeah, but this is costing you, X amount of dollars in your taxes every year because we aren't doing these things. And then when you start looking at it, the potential of what you're going to get rid of, it's like, okay, you're not getting rid of that much stuff every year consistently to the point where I guess it depends on when people have had enough of paying so much.
As long as there's a conversation happening.
Yeah.
About it, you're kind of on the pulse of it, and that's the best we can do. So.
And I do like if people see stuff there and they let me, I have to know within 14 days, right? Because I only get 14 days worth of stuff before it overwrites everything. So it's like if you see something, reach out and let me know so I can go back and look and see if it's something that doesn't look right.
Last Wednesday morning, at 9:30 or 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
I was hopping the fence, throwing it back.
Yeah, that's another thing. We talked about that too. I've driven by there and seen people walking through it, and it could be a resident still, it's closed, so it's no trespassing, right? But we don't have that continuous fence to prevent people, it's hard to get in from the other side because it's a straight drop to the river.
Yeah.
But that's something that should probably be looked at in the near future is fencing that in properly.
And I'm sitting here laughing because we live beside someone who doesn't take advantage of the fact that we have a transfer
They
station.
literally have their trash bags.
They just open the door and throw. Been doing that for years, and it's kind of.
Besides, it's
Serious. Yeah.
Like, true.
To go there and say, we'll help you, but that's just putting a Band-Aid on the issue. So I'm laughing that I'm having.
And that's the other thing, we don't see more junk in people's yards because they're like, I'm not paying to get rid of this, so then it just accumulates, so it's.
Exactly. So there's.
This is where people need to communicate what they want to people in town.
Yeah.
We're all paying for it.
I mean, we have friends who go by our house and say, why doesn't your town do something? Our town doesn't.
People, so if there is an issue, and it's brought to the town, and then there is a process. And there are some properties right now that the process has begun. It's long, it's lengthy, and it can be expensive, but the select board and the town is moving forward on some properties. So for you or for anybody else who may see or live by a situation that could endanger the health of others or the environmental.
I think so, because this is actual garbage.
So then, by all means, share the information and people will
Yeah,
move forward.
start the paper trail.
Just
Sometimes things are in the works and people don't realize it because it's the process,
Yeah,
but by all means. Yeah, that's one of the reasons people pay taxes is for protection of themselves and their property.
So going through past the waste and recycling, the only other increase that you'll see is to phone, fax and internet, and that's directly correlated with the installation of security cameras after the break-ins. So having the internet put in there, which is crucial because if you don't and they break in, they'll just steal the DVR and you don't know what happens. So we do have that there now, which I never thought we'd need it, but it's there and it's a good tool now that it's there.
Yes. All right.
So as Sandra hit on, you said what, 68,000? Yeah, roughly. It's a $68,000 increase, that takes, well, when we get into the revenues, I'll talk about the overall Sumner share versus our share, but. All right, and then the last part of the budget, obviously, school and tech county. This is all completely hypothetical and I have no information to provide. I just budgeted a 5% increase. It would be awesome if that's all the school and county came in with. I'm pessimistic about it, but if that were the case, that's where the budget would be sitting at. Which, as you can see, under the expense total was roughly a $400,000 increase, or just under 300 and some thousand. It's actually not totally true because county's tax bill this past year was actually $200,028, but I had already imported the budget before I got the letter that they sent us the wrong amount. So it's actually 4,925,600 and some change, as opposed to that 4915. I can't change it once it's been locked in. So
But that's last year's numbers, not this year.
yeah, no, this year's numbers is that's calculation based off of everything that's here. And again, that includes $2 million of school and $210,000 for county. Now, the remaining 3-ish million or 3 million isn't what we tax residents. That's where the revenues come in.
That's all.
So if you look at the first page, which is page 25 of the revenue, you see the general administration, government. So this is interest earned on bank accounts, the fees we collect for registering motor vehicles, interest and costs. That's what we bring in when the interest from taxes, tax revenue, that, back taxes or late taxes. Inland fisheries and wildlife, that's what we collect for registering ATVs, snowmobiles, hunting licenses, faxes and copies. We just recently started charging again for copies since pre-COVID. So we get 20 cents a copy. So I put the $100 in there. Not a lot of people get copies, so. Vitals, that's birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates, RV registration fees. Sorry, that's recreational vehicles, so ATVs, four-wheelers. Motor vehicle reminders, that's going down. Less and less people are asking for those cards. And honestly, all it really did was pay to send it up to them. So it wasn't really a revenue, but we include it because we do, bring it in. Building and driveway fees, it's $50 fee to do a driveway permit. If you're gonna put a new driveway in, it's $50 plus whatever we charge them elsewhere for the culvert. And then building permit fees, we didn't adjust this based off the new rates, but I did bring it up $500 because the select board did change the fees on building permits last year. It was last year. So there's a $25 base fee up to 500 square feet, and that's 5 cents a square foot. After that, we were only charging for a 4,000 square foot house. We were only charging like $50. Other towns, we're still lower than most towns around us. So that's where that goes. Miscellaneous admin revenue, that's trust fund interest, but also if a check comes in a refund or something that we just weren't, it's been outstanding for years or whatever, it gets receipted into there. It's kind of the catch-all for things we don't have a line for. plumbing permits, motor vehicle excise, so obviously that's the big one. Every time you register your vehicle and you pay the excise portion of it, that's what we get, the state gets the rest. Boat excise, same thing, and then we get roughly $7,500 a year from cable TV franchise agreement we have. That comes from Spectrum, or Charter. So all in, you're looking, what? If you include the $100 that I anticipate renting out the municipal center room or whatever that we might hit on, $446,450. So if you go back to your general admin and think about what general admin costs, it's lower than what we, what the office brings back into the town for services. So it's public safety fire, so 30,000. So we're currently renegotiating that contract. Obviously, it has to go to Hartford's town meeting for approval and our town meeting. Either way, if the contract expires and they haven't approved it, I've already provided that information to them. So if they wish to continue to have Buckfield provide the service without the contract, our previous contract allowed us to tell them what amount it was and continue it until a new one's signed. So I'm anticipating the $30,000. We only cover one little or not little, but a section of Hartford. Canton covers another section, Turner covers another.
That's supposed to cover any of Hartford.
What's that?
Sumner.
So Sumner doesn't have a contract with Hartford, but Sumner provides mutual aid to us or to Turner or to Canton. They don't currently, my understanding is they don't currently bill Hartford for that. If I was in Hartford shoes, I would, because mutual aid is supposed to be mutual, right? Hartford doesn't have a fire department. So them providing us mutual aid to another town isn't really what I would consider mutual aid. I think they used to in the past and then they stopped for some reason, but it's not to say they might not have a contract in the future, but when we call them, they come. Our portion's $30,000 or proposed to be $30,000. So that helps offset our fire department costs. Obviously Hartford isn't the bulk of our fire calls. I think last year was 28 calls to Hartford, and that's everything from fires to vehicle accidents to whatever. So it helps to offset some of our expenses. And it's roughly per capita, it's roughly about the same per capita based off the population of that area of Hartford we cover is what Buckfield pays. Public safety and rescue. So this year's proposed revenue is 225,000. That's a $15,000 decrease from last year. I hit on the transfers, right? We had hoped we could, utilize some more of that to make more revenue to help offset that, but they're just not out there as much. And then with the economic environment, the way things are, Stacy, our rescue chief, she's like, we gotta kind of anticipate that people are gonna choose, do I pay my food or do I, so it may take longer to collect some of that money. So we felt it responsible to decrease that number a bit. So 225 plus 30, that's 255,000. So you take that big number we had for public works, and as long as the residents of Buckfield approve accepting the revenues, that amount would come off the taxable amount, so you can see the savings, or not the savings, but the reduced cost, the subsidized cost. We did have a question about billing, I was like, so we're paying for this, but why are we getting billed? So federal guidelines say if we bill Medicare or Medicaid, we have to bill all equally. So whether you have insurance or don't have insurance, we can't just selectively bill Medicare. So that's why we bill for everything, right? And the reality of it is, if we didn't bill, these numbers would be extremely higher because you'd be paying the full cost of the service with no revenue coming in. So you basically, when you're paying your taxes, you're paying a subsidized rate of the rescue service, because in anticipation that we're going to receive a portion of that back, which I think Bob said is roughly 30 cents on the dollar. So
yeah.
they're the true costs. And this is why ambulance services all over the state are struggling right now, because what they're getting back is, if it was a real, a traditional business, they'd all go bankrupt. And I think they just changed state law recently that requires you to have either a contract for rescue services or a rescue service in general. So you can't just be like, let's take our chance. But, so that's the revenue for the public safety side of things. I didn't include any animal welfare revenue, primarily because this is the first year we've actually had, somebody that's writing citations, and it's probably a minuscule amount of money, but it's enough to help offset his costs. But until I have data, I don't have anything to go with, and some of those cases can sit there forever. It seems like, well, the restitution by the time they pay it and everything is, so.
Yeah.
Parks and Rec, this is the increase I told you about. I increased that number from 10,000 to 13,750. It's primarily driven through registration fees, sponsorships, that stuff. Depending on the number of volunteers, if we're actually able to have concessions, we could generate more funding that way. A lot of times with concessions, it's the end result of what we make is relatively small because we take the money and then reinvest it into replacing the stuff we sold, but there usually is some funding that we get out of it. So I went with a student number 13,750, which is what I anticipate for registrations and sponsorship, which eats up the $3,000 increase that is in there. The church, there's a $200 line there. That's trust fund interest that we get from the trust, the funding we have set aside for the church. So that income goes back into that. So the $5,000, $200 will come back as interest to help that. The library, there's a bunch of stuff here. So Hartford and Sumner traditionally, they give us $1,000 donation or contribution. The John D. Long Trust is a split four-way between the roads, the schools, the poor, and library. I think. Did I say that already? I get a little confused after I talk for so long.
Right.
So we take whatever I project for revenue for that interest earned on that account, and I just split it four ways, and they get a share of that. And then we have the Library Anonymous Trust, which has a considerable amount of money in it, so it generates a fair amount of interest. I think there's roughly 200,000. So whatever the interest rate's at when it's high, it's good. So that's where the $9,600 coming from. Lock fund is another one. Accumulated donation reserve. That's actually a reserve account. I'm just recommending that we take $3,500 out of that to help offset costs. I think I'd have to look. I thought there was like 30,000 or 30-something thousand in that account. So we've been gradually taking money out of that. And then photocopies, which again is in a high line, so it's not just shy of $1,000. Primarily, had interest rates stayed where they were at, it probably would have been higher, but interest rates are settling. Public Works, $7,000 of the 11,500 is what the transfer station pays to rent tobacco that the town of Buckfield owns. I've hit on this in meetings that tobacco's getting tired, but we're still limping it through. So hopefully it'll continue on for another year before we have to figure out an alternative, but. So Sumner covers 35% of that, we cover 7,000 of it, comes in as revenue for the town. It's just a transfer, but it has to be treated as revenue. Driveway culverts, that's where we recoup the money for the culverts plus the materials that our guys will install. And then the John D. Long Trust Fund to mirror the library's 1,500, that's the roads 1,500. Cemeteries, trust funds as well, $1,500 from the Buckfield Damon Cemetery Reserve. And then this trust fund interest, there's various perpetual care funds for different cemeteries. That's all included in all of this to make up our $4,680. All right, so waste management, this is Sumner's share. So 35% of that overall operating budget is now 107,940. So that's what Sumner will pay, broken into 4 payments back to the town of Buckfield. So when they accept the revenues, they're accepting Sumner's share, which means we don't tax out for it. They vote no on all this revenue money doesn't get deducted, and we tax the full amount of everything we just talked about. So no
Well,
vote
that
no.
just comes to educating people.
On what it means to
Right.
vote on accepting that.
Yeah.
Always accept revenue. You don't have to vote yes on everything else, but always accept the revenue. And then if anything comes in higher than the projected revenue that's accepted at town meeting, it'll fall to fund balance. It's not like the town can just spend it on whatever they want. So. The last page is state revenues. So we hit on the municipal revenue sharing. It's $100,000 less than last year. I was kind of hoping it was a typo, but it hasn't changed, so. That's where that $100,000 deficit's coming from. Everything else primarily is the same. Tree growth, I increased a little bit because our acreage values and our new assessments. I don't know what that's gonna look like because I haven't received one of those yet as far as where we're gonna be at. But that's where that's from. Veterans exemptions, that's all what the state reimburses us for that. Snowmobile registration, we accept 900, but then if the voters pass it, we end up donating or giving back 75% to the snowmobile club. The pit tax loss, that's like a waste manure pit. We've got 2 of those in town. The state reimburses us for that. And then Betty and Homestead, Betty's business equipment tax exemption. Those aren't actually included in our overall revenue. On this sheet, it shows it as part of it, but when we actually calculate what we ask the town to accept, it doesn't include that because it's already factored in a different spot. So all in, it's a decrease in revenues, an increase in expenses. If you look at just the expense side of things, the calculation I had was it came up to. Sorry, I made notes. I just need to find it. That's revenues. Expenses was as proposed, was an 8.9% increase. That's obviously not factoring in your revenues, which is a negative compared to last year. So the overall increase is actually higher than that. I haven't tallied that up yet, but expenses alone, that's what we're looking at there. Revenues. How the heck did I look for these numbers? Child state revenues, 98,500, not counting Homestead and Betty. I hate it when I make notes and I don't understand what the heck I wrote down. Other revenues, I've got 918. Oh, this is because I was playing around with an MVR, which is the form we send to the state, which sets our mill rate and determines our tax rate. So our other revenues is 918,370. That includes state and local revenues. What it doesn't include is a fund balance appropriation. I haven't heard back from the auditors as far as what their number is for the fund balance. I feel confident saying that the town, I could recommend that we use 200,000 from fund balance to offset taxes. But if you were to go and not do a fund balance appropriation, it's talking roughly 80 cents per thousand more than if you did the 200,000. So it's about what? 275,000 is 1 mil on your tax rate. So you'd have to cut 275 to 300,000 to just drop your taxes by $1 per thousand.
Which is a fair amount of money.
Yeah, so what I did was, and this is all completely estimated, I do not have a potential mill rate. If I were to look at this today and use all the numbers from last year, which obviously last year's numbers are outdated because we've got new houses that we're picking up. We've got, different adjustments, but if you were to take this entire budget in its entirety and change nothing and not make a fund balance appropriation, I estimate that the mill rate would sit at like 1580. If you did the 200,000, it'd be at 15. If you wiped out the entire paving budget, you'd finally be down to like 1310, which is still higher than last year. So I'm only using that as an example so people can understand what this will entail. So, I mean, what it really comes down to is if people are really strong, I put together a budget that I feel is realistic. Obviously I can't argue with the voters if they think something's different and they vote that way, that's the way it's gonna be. It's just gonna be a decision on what services do you want to cut? Because at the end of the day, what's going to drive this is what is our school increase and what is our county increase in addition to our municipal budget. And the only thing we have really any control over, if nobody's going to participate in the school stuff, is the town. And I think at some point we need to realize that we can't just keep cutting the town's throat to subsidize the school. So that's just my opinion. I'm a taxpayer too, but I try to keep this as reasonable and based off of fact and reasoning that made sense to me. The last thing I want to see is my taxes go up either. Mine went up quite a bit last year because of the revale, so.
Yeah,
But I also understand that it's in order to fix things and in order to operate, it has a cost, so. That's basically my spiel. I'm not gonna be here Saturday, so I hope, I know I said I wasn't gonna present this twice, but because you two weren't here, I kind of wanted everybody to have everything full, so not one of you has to present the whole thing by yourselves, but I hope you guys feel like you can answer questions or concerns as they come up.
Feeling pretty confident, having listened twice. Give me a chance to pick up on things I missed the first time. Or just reading through myself.
And you shaved it down by an hour and a half.
I'm sure I only got on probably 60% of everything that you were just trying to get used to terms and.
Yeah, right.
But that's 60% further along than I was before I went.
yeah, it's been more public, other than involved,
So,
I would think a weekday afternoon might be the harder time.
It's the hope. I mean, we've been trying, or they've been trying. I was trying before they were trying because obviously I was here before Zelia, but to get more public engagement, to get the information out there, to have more opportunities for people to speak. Tuesday's meeting, we had two. And like you know, two new people that I haven't seen in a meeting that, you know, were engaged and asking good questions. So we're already making progress. There's quite a few people watching on Facebook right now. So a lot of people watch and listen. They don't watch to, you know, ask questions, but maybe they'll have a question later on. But we do have, this is the first time we've actually watched how many people are viewing.
well, and I know they're not viewing the whole thing.
No, they're
Popping
viewing.
in and seeing what we're talking about, maybe going.
And then people post
Any given time, maximum, I've seen 3 concurrent viewers and I'm pretty sure we're 2. But also this will give people a chance to, you know, listen back. It'll be up on the website, it'll be up on our Facebook and, you know, this is a good. We kind of bounced around last time, but this video will be a good way to just kind of read right through it from top to bottom and hopefully help those people who maybe can't make it on Saturday morning.
And with that said, I mean, so I told Azalea, March, and so just go away. If you go to the budget committee page, which I've actually linked on the homepage, it actually says over here, 25-26 budget. If you click that, I'm actually uploading these videos because I'm recording them. So Tuesday's meeting is here, and then I will add tonight's or today's. That way, you know, something was said in this meeting that wasn't said in the last one. Somebody actually wants to sit down and kind of zoom through it and listen to it. It's available there. Town's YouTube page or whatever posts all these videos too. So I understand some people can't sit down for 2.5 hours to talk about this, but I'm trying to put as much information out there so that.
It's appreciated.
When you do upload this video to that page, will you make a note that this is the video where we go through it like page 1, page 30, just all in a row?
Yeah,
I feel like this might be the least confusing one so far. Not that it was unclear last time,
It was
like
just
we
all-
did bounce around.
No, I think-
Because we have the department heads here who wanted to
I was trying
and eating dinner.
yeah, I didn't want them to have to sit here till 9:30 at night.
So, yeah, thank you guys for showing up and engaging in this process. We really appreciate it.
Hopefully we can make other.
Yeah, yes, tune other people in or spread the word.
And for those that haven't participated this week, they are doing another one on Saturday at
9
9.
AM, yep.
So we tried.
Part was day, evening, weekday, afternoon. Weekend.
Yes.
Option to try to.
And all this paperwork, all this information is on here as well as.
Yep.
Available in paper form here.
Everybody's coming in paper.
Email any one of us, call any one of us, come in and talk to Cameron, we'll go to people.
Yeah.
We're available to go meet with people. So,
So I do this link right here links right to the budget the paperwork that you have in front of you. And and Langston named it version 1 because once the select board gets to it and makes changes or adjustments, if they do. I'll edit it, but then post it as version 2 so people can see where we started and where we ended up.
Just helpful. Cool.
I missed my afternoon nap.
Well, thanks for not falling asleep here.
I don't, so it's a night owl. Yep.
Still recording or?
Yeah, it's so I'm gonna go ahead and everybody is all set. Meeting with you. Is that? Willis Seligman comes this thing.
Yes, Azalea Cormier would like to end this select board workshop. Thank you for everyone who's tuning in currently or after the fact. We appreciate your engagement with this process.
Thanks, Bob.
Good job.
Yeah.